We begin with a beautiful view of the building of the 4th Academy in the city of Su. Director Shui Jinlong announces that today is the day when students will become players, and the system will assign them a class. It could be a swordsman, a knight, an assassin, or a mage. Then a magic circle activates beneath the student's feet. This boy's name is Chao Yu, and he says it's been 18 years since he reincarnated. This world is called Kaiji, a parallel world that's very similar to Earth. The only difference is that in this world, there are dungeons, and when humans turn 18, they receive abilities to use and clear those dungeons. Upon entering the portal, which they call the inner world, he prays that a good class will be granted to him. A voice asks if this is his first time there, and he replies that it is. After a brief loading screen, a skull wrapped in shadows circles around the boy, and a message appears saying that a secret class has been granted. The name of this class is NECROMANCER. The boy is amazed by such news. A NECROMANCER is an extremely rare class. Only 1 or 2 people in the entire history of the world have ever received it. With a single swing of his weapon, countless high-ranking skeletons can be summoned, and as long as he has mana, he becomes a one-man army. The protagonist says that, in general, receiving a rare class means your stats will be much stronger, but when he checks, he sees that he has 0 spirit. He is stunned. How can someone with the Necromancer class have 0 spirit? Initial attributes are distributed randomly, with 10 being the highest, and spirit is the most important stat for a Necromancer. He had the bad luck of getting 0. The system announces that it's time to generate a random talent as well, but the protagonist is so shaken that not even an S-rank talent could save him. The system then finally grants him the talent Brave Heart of a Mage, of unknown grade. This talent gave him an attribute point every time he defeated an enemy using physical attacks, allowing him to boost 1 basic attribute at a time. Even more incredible, since attributes were usually gained only by leveling up, and now he could earn them through battle. With this talent, he could potentially max out all his attributes. As a novice, he now had the potential to reach the maximum in each one. A truly formidable player. He considered maxing out his stats before using this ability, turning himself into an unstoppable force. Since physical attacks were needed to trigger the passive ability, strength became his top priority. So, he allocated all 10 points to strength. With 20 points in strength, his vigor was now far above average. With that done, he had to complete the beginner's task to finalize the acquisition of his class. He was teleported to the location of the task. There, he stood before a portal, accompanied by a young woman. She was his guide, Elaine, assigned to assist him if needed. He told her he was there to register and complete his first beginner's mission. She was happy to help and gave him a gift for beginners. He received an old cloak, a beginner's staff, and a book that taught him how to summon skeletons. The cloak was an accessory, and the staff was useless to him due to his lack of spirit. However, with 20 points in strength, the staff made an excellent club. He was ready to learn about his first task, his mission, to escape alive from the misty cavern. He had to be quick, careful, and avoid destroying any skeletal soldiers, though Elaine hadn't finished explaining the consequences. He had already entered the portal before Elaine could finish her sentence. Inside, he walked deeper into the cavern, which was filled with piles of bones. Only now did he realize she had been trying to tell him something important. He hadn't thought it would be so difficult, and was overwhelmed by the sheer number of skeletons. It didn't take long before one saw him as an enemy and attacked. The sound of the approach alerted him. The skeleton was a level 1 monster, with 5 strength and 1 agility. His staff was already in hand, ready to be used as a club. The two were about to clash. A single strike from him was devastating. The skeleton couldn't withstand it. Its head fell to the ground, lifeless. He checked to confirm it was truly dead. Not being able to use magic made things more difficult. For that kill, he gained 1 attribute point, 3 experience points, and an A-rank passive ability, Miracle of the Mighty. Each of his strength points could now be converted into 2 attack points. Strength determined attack, and defense reduced incoming damage. With his passive ability, his strength was effectively doubled for attack purposes. Against an enemy with no defense, he could now deal 42 damage in a single hit. Simply absurd. While he was still thinking, several skeletal hands began emerging from the ground. The skeletons were ready to strike with their knives, as if performing a sinister dance. Upon seeing them, he decided to focus on completing the task. The group moved in, eager to finish what the first skeleton could not. As they approached ready to strike, a single swing of his staff rendered them undead once more. He earned 4 more attribute points and 12 experience points. He also leveled up, earning 5 additional attribute points, bringing his total strength to 30 points. A beginner genius typically had only 10. This felt far too easy, and he began to wonder if the skeletons were merely there to let him level up without any real effort. It didn't take long before more skeletons began to rise from the ground. This time, it was a level 3 captain, with 15 strength and 20 defense, strong enough to cause serious trouble if it managed to land a hit. However, with only 1 agility, it was highly unlikely it could strike him. His first staff attack was blocked by the skeleton's shield. After defending, the skeleton countered, striking the ground where the player had stood. Not only was the movement precise, but the blow was powerful enough to create a hole in the ground. Knowing the skeleton was slower, he spotted an opening in its defense. This time, the staff struck its unprotected ribs. The hit made the skeleton lose balance and fall, giving him a clear chance for a solid blow. Exhilarated, he taunted the skeleton to try and block this one. The staff came down like a police baton on an unaware target's back. He earned 3 more attribute points and 10 experience points. That had been harder than expected, and he couldn't imagine how other players were getting through this. Then he remembered what director Jin Long had said about monsters sometimes dropping their cores, which granted random rewards. And now he was curious to see what this one would drop. It turned out to be consumable gloves that guaranteed the next strike would be a critical hit, though they could only be used once. While standing still and analyzing the item, more skeletons began to emerge from the ground. He certainly didn't expect more enemies to show up, and with each rising skeleton, even more followed. Even though he was now level 2, he only had 20 health points and needed to be cautious. Still, with his overwhelming strength, dealing with these monsters was too easy, and he earned another 10 attribute points. Thankfully, the skeletons only had 1 agility point, which made them slow. He decided to check his attribute window. At level 3, his strength had already reached 46 points. Outside, the students were discussing the classes they had received. Some would make their parents proud. Director Jin Long remained silent, seemingly waiting for one last student to finish the test. No one could understand how it was taking so long. After all, the task was just to run, and the skeletons were slow. Among the students, someone who knew him was growing concerned. Inside the cavern, he wondered if the skeletons were finally done, and why there was still no notification about the task's completion. Then, a haunting voice echoed, asking how he dared. His attention snapped to the source of the voice. Skulls began levitating around the cave. They started flying, and the boy had to dodge them. In front of him, bones were assembling, forming something larger. Shadows, resembling flames, rose from the ground. Now standing before him was a terrifying creature, clearly more dangerous than anything that had appeared so far. It was the Skeleton King, already injured, but still boasting 45 strength, 60 defense, and abilities such as piercing bone and explosive bone. A boss like this in a beginner's task was excessive, and he began to wonder if director Jin Long intended for the students to become just memories. The Skeleton King prepared to strike first. The initial attack missed the young man. He was lucky to dodge it. Had it landed, he likely wouldn't be alive. His advantage lay in the king's lack of agility, but the real question was whether he could break through such high defense. There was only one way to find out. His first strike landed on an exposed part of the skeleton. The blow dealt 32 points of damage. It had worked. Now, he only had to repeat that 10 more times. Motivated, he launched a flurry of attacks on the Skeleton King. With its low agility, there wasn't much it could do to avoid being hit. After being struck repeatedly, the king collapsed to the ground, exhausted. The young man wondered why the boss was already down when it still had 200 health points left. That's when something unexpected occurred. It was the first time the Skeleton King had seen someone make it through the cavern using only physical strikes. If it still had its minions, it wouldn't have been this weakened. A mere novice had managed to breach its defense. It couldn't allow this player to leave the place alive. Suddenly, the Skeleton King grew even stronger. It began tracking the player's movements and was ready to counterattack. Now, it was visibly faster. It launched another attack, and the player narrowly dodged it. He was still the more agile of the two, but things were getting riskier. Head-on attacks wouldn't be as effective anymore. He needed to adapt to the Skeleton King's new speed. The monster struck again. Then the player noticed a boulder, unstable and ready to fall. As he dodged the attack, he moved closer to it. The two locked eyes, silently analyzing each other. The player deliberately provoked the Skeleton King, urging it to attack him at that spot. The provocation worked. The king prepared to strike. Their first clash was blocked using the staff. However, the force of the blow sent the player flying, costing him 26 health points. Even though it was just a shove, he was left with only 4 health points. The Skeleton King, unsatisfied, kept advancing, determined to end the fight. The player knew that even the slightest hit would be fatal. The monster struck again, heedless of its surroundings. Just as it completed its attack, rocks from the cave ceiling began falling directly onto its head. That small collapse costs it 70 health points. Now it struggles to free itself from the trap, with only 129 health points remaining. Seeing it trapped, the player decides to seize the opportunity to end it quickly, knowing he can't afford to continue the fight with so little health left. Motivated, he prepares to finish everything with a single blow. He equips a single-use glove that guarantees his next attack will be a critical hit. This time, he won't use the staff. He's going to rely on his fists. The skeleton watches its adversary completely powerless. A powerful punch is delivered, destroying part of the cave floor. The flames surrounding the skeleton begin to fade away slowly. Finally, the system announces that he has completed the task. and as a reward for being the first to defeat the boss, he receives 30 attribute points. For having defeated it bare-handed, he earns an additional 10 points, 50 experience points, and 3 levels. Additionally, he receives the Skeleton King's Ring, which he hadn't expected. When used, the next attack deals 50% additional damage, with a cooldown of a full day. It's a good item because it's reusable in a Class C, meaning he could sell it for a significant value. Stelly's intrigued that he was the first to defeat the Skeleton King. He wants to know how others managed to pass that test, but it no longer matters. He just wants to leave. Now he has 76 strength points, with the brave heart of the mage Talon, and the skill muscle makes miracles. Finally, he appears outside among the other students. His friend Yang hugs him joyfully, relieved after worrying about his delay. Yang wants to know why it took him so long since everyone else completes it quickly, leaving him even more surprised. It's been 3 hours since the last person finished the task, so he asks Yang about his class. Proudly, Yang says he's now a mage. It's strange, as if they had entered the same world. A snob approaches Xiao, saying he was the last to complete the task. Meifei is the pest's name, and he says the protagonist is just a fool, asking if he wants to know what his class is. Xiao wonders why this guy loves to pick on him. It's like dealing with a silly child. It doesn't take long for the director to address everyone, announcing that training starts tomorrow, and students should now present their classes and talents. Some of them introduce themselves enthusiastically, while others less so as they have low-ranked talents. A girl says that besides being a mage, she's also a healer. Her name is Xiao. Ju says she's a paladin with a B-rank talent. The annoying Meifei is a swordsman with a B-rank talent as well. Some students begin stroking his ego since a swordsman is a very good class. Thinking to himself, the director realizes that with B-rank talent, some of them could become remarkable. Now it's Xiao's turn to present himself. He announces he's a necromancer, but before saying what his talent is, he stops speaking. It's not convenient to reveal his talent. The truth is, even he doesn't know what it is. The director is quite pleased because a necromancer is his secret class. The students are even more surprised because a necromancer once wiped an entire union off the face of the earth. Meifei is intrigued by this secret class since mages are fragile in melee combat. Necromancers are even weaker than mages physically and rely on offensive classes for protection while casting spells. Since Xiao didn't reveal his talent, Meifei assumes it must be something very low rank. Some comment that Xiao is a cool guy because he's not bragging about having a secret class. If it were them, they'd already be showing off. The problem is that he can't cast any spells and doubts he'll be able to defend himself during training. The director, however, concludes that once Xiao completes the basics, he'll be able to choose the best universities in the country. After everyone introduces themselves, it's time to go home and rest for training. His friend is happy for him and wishes he had been a necromancer too. At least he has 8 points in strength, which isn't bad, and his talent isn't so bad either. But hard work should fill in the gaps. Seeing that all of his friend's attributes are only single digits, Xiao realizes he's way ahead of the curve. Finally, he arrives home. He always announces his arrival, even though his parents aren't there as they are missing. In this world, his parents were very kind and loving people. When he was 6, they had to go to the capital. They disappeared afterward, leaving him an orphan. 12 years have passed and he wishes to know what happened to them. What he wants now is to go to the capital and uncover the truth. The next day, the students are gathered and the director says he only has one request. If they can't handle it, they should return immediately. Failing the training is much better than not living to see another day. In any case, it's not common for casualties to occur in this beginner's world, but there are always exceptions. Once, an entire class of 40 students disappeared without a trace. To this day, they don't know what that world was like, only that it was called a nightmare village. If the intention was to scare the students, the goal was more than achieved. But it wasn't supposed to be so terrifying, he says. As long as they return in time, there's no danger. When the timer reaches 0, they'll be able to enter the portal. Finally, the countdown ended. The beginner's training had begun. Several black lightning bolts form, and they are now in another world. The students find themselves in what appears to be an abandoned village. Some look around in fear, but Muffy says he's with them and that's enough for protection. A pair of suspicious feet observe the students hidden in the shadows. Confident, Muffy asks them to follow him, promising to lead them to the end of the training. With this, he wants to prove to everyone that he's the strongest, and that even though Kyo has a secret class, he's no match for him. Everything about this place was strange. There hadn't been any sign of the system so far. A figure appears and says it's truly pitiful. Because they're all so young, it's almost heartbreaking. Not knowing if it's an NPC or not, Kyo asks the figure what he means by that. Finally, he greets them formally. He welcomes them, explaining that they are now in the Nightmare Village, where the seemingly simple challenge has an S-level difficulty. The is calculated differently. It would be equivalent to an E-level dungeon in normal terms. Their task is to survive and uncover the secret at the center of the village. Knowing the story the director told, They are terrified. Faced with this, some try to escape, unwilling to stay in such a place. Muffy attempts to calm the students, explaining that for an E-level challenge, one must at least be in the initial stage. They are all still disciples. Beyond that comes the initial, intermediate, final, king, and divine stages. As soon as one student reaches the village exit, the barrier prevents them from leaving. The man explains that once they are inside, they cannot leave. It doesn't take long for panic to set in, leaving the students completely hopeless. The man's bluntness makes Kyo perceive him not as an enemy, but as someone truthful, making it plausible that others may have vanished at this stage. Walking among them, he tells them not to worry, and encourages them to get more comfortable. Muffy interprets this as the man motivating them to face the challenges with confidence. In reality, he is suggesting they accept the fact they won't survive past this day. If there weren't heavy pants before, there are certainly more than one now. He introduces himself as Woogum, the village chief, and explains there are 2 rules for living in this place. They can live in any vacant house, but must not touch the black stones on the doors. The second rule is to always return home before dark, and to lock all doors and windows, never opening them under any circumstances. Kyo asks why they can't leave their houses at night. The man responds that the boy will understand once night falls in this place. As night comes, everyone decides to follow the man's instructions. They divide into 4 groups of 11 people. Kaino's team enters one of the houses. Finally, the doors close. One of them suggests resting on the 2nd floor just to be safe. The healing mage approaches him, asking to be protected in case of danger. As a healer, she can provide him with a lot of health points if needed. Another girl accuses Zhao of being shameless, pointing out how blatantly seductive she was being in front of everyone. Now the 2 are arguing about trivial matters. The argument continues, and the smaller girl mocks the other, claiming her attributes are only high because she's fat. Through the window, one of the students looks outside. He sees his grandmother, someone he hasn't seen in a long time and dearly misses. She begins to say she's cold and would like to come inside, but he needs to open the window. Completely oblivious to the situation, the boy starts to open the window. Zhao yells for him to stop, explaining that it's not his grandmother, but the window is already open. The woman's eyes start to turn red. She immediately lunges at the clueless boy who opened the window. Her jaws resemble those of an animal, and the student is about to become a memory. A spear is conjured inside the house. San appears, containing the ability. It's Yang, who declares he won't be able to hold the monster for much longer. However, it's enough time for the clueless boy to save his own life. This is a level 3 monster with 25 points in strength and agility. A normal monster, but extremely strong by novice standards. Focusing its attention on the mage, the monster attacks. Unable to dodge, the mage jokes that if he eats him, he has so much fat it'll make the monster sick. The attack is stopped by a magical barrier that appears. It was conjured by the smaller girl, but as time passes, she begins to lose health. She demands the healer do her job and asks Kyo to summon his undead. Listening to her, both start working as well. The healer prepares her healing magic. She manages to restore her teammates' health as fast as it depletes. If everyone works together, victory is possible, as long as Kyo performs his summoning spell. But seeing him already on the front lines surprises her. A single strike with the staff is enough to push the monster back. Yang worries, saying that's not how the staff is supposed to be used and that his friend is putting himself in danger. Yet again, Kyo strikes the monster, taking 50 health points in the process. There is no longer a monster inside the house, and his teammates don't know what to say about the situation. It's impossible to believe a nightmare was defeated with a single strike, and they wonder if that's how a necromancer is supposed to act. In its place, there was a black stone, while the rest of the monster dissipated. The symbol is identical to the one on the door of the house. Kyo imagines there must have been a bug since he didn't gain any skill points after defeating that monster. His colleague asks if he noticed anything strange, but he says it might just be his imagination. At dawn the next day, Yang thanks his colleagues. If not for them, he doesn't know what would have happened. Some comment that Kyo was really strong, and that Zhu provided formidable protection, which Mephi overhears. Even so, he believes that if he had been there, he would have done better. He's confident he could also defeat a nightmare with a single strike. Kyo asks if he's already training in the morning, and his friend says it's expected from the class monitor. Mephi tries to compose himself and says he was just practicing a little, nothing more. He then tells Zhu to stay with him, promising not to let her take any damage, but the girl says that's her role. If she doesn't take damage, someone else will. He tries to insist he'll fight alone, but she says that's misguided thinking, and that they need to work together and learn from Kyo. Amid their conversation, someone shouts to finish everyone there. None should escape, and all of them should be thrown into the fire. The village chief orders them to eliminate anyone who resists. Mephi says there must be some misunderstanding, but the chief replies that they know what they did last night. Xiao notices the numbers on both sides are roughly equal, with no significant age difference. The chief explains that the nightmares protect the village, and by breaking the rules they are being punished. For their sins they must be punished more than 1,000 times. Mephi asks if there's another way, claiming they destroyed the nightmare accidentally. Indeed there is. The one who angered the nightmares must spend the night outside the shelter. The chief is curious to see if anyone among them has the courage. Not knowing the number or danger lurking outside, staying outside the house is basically asking to become a memory. Xiao quickly steps forward, saying he was the one who defeated the nightmare and will stay outside. Mephi is worried and tries to fix the situation, thinking Kyo has lost his mind. However, not only is he perfectly lucid, but he also has something he wants to investigate, something that might help them escape that place. Once they agree, it's time for him to be tied up. Kyo is chained in the middle of the village. The girl asks what he means by being able to help, and if he knows anything about the village's secret. He might have a good theory, but needs to test it at night. Finally, the moon rises into the sky, illuminating the village streets. The nightmares begin to appear. One of them descends from the roof eerily. Spotting its target, it leaps from the roof toward the boy. He was expecting to be attacked, so he's not surprised. What surprises him is the containment spell that appears to protect him. His friend tells him to act quickly, as he can't hold the nightmare for much longer. Mephi steps in, convinced he can handle the nightmare, and tells everyone to calm down. However, reality quickly hits him hard. Fortunately, he manages to defend himself with his sword. The nightmare is too fast, and he has no idea how Kyo dealt with one as just a mage. Confidently, he thinks that if Kyo managed it, he should be able to as well. His attack strikes the nightmare, but deals only 5 points of damage. He wasn't expecting everyone else to be outside, but they came because they thought he would be in trouble alone. The chains are thick, and the girl says only Mephi can break them, but he's busy at the moment. However, that's unnecessary. Kyo breaks the chains with his own hands. That abnormal strength makes them reconsider whether he's truly a necromancer. Meanwhile, Mephi's harsh reality continues. The girls and Kyo head toward him to help, and Jo begins preparing her healing magic. He refuses, saying it's unnecessary, as scars build a warrior. He then tells them to aim for the head, as it's the weak spot. Kyo does so, and the nightmare succumbs. It was rather obvious, and he thinks he should have figured it out sooner. Kyo says the weak spot isn't the head, but Mephi thinks he's being sabotaged. Now it's time for him to observe his next attack. He believes it's going to be something spectacular to witness. He hopes the nightmare has fallen, but it begins to rise from the ground again, making him question if Yang was right about the weak spot. But this was what Kyo did. Maybe he just wasn't as good as the necromancer. This inflated Mephi's ego, as he thought himself far superior to Kyo. They try calling him back, warning that in his current state, he might end up dead. The nightmare doesn't care about him, and is ready to attack. Mephi launches a powerful barrage of attacks, yielding 30 points of damage to the monster. Only one more strike was needed to prove he wasn't inferior to Kyo, but then a staff lands the final blow. Mephi is completely outraged. Kyo says he did well, but the monitor is furious that the monster was stolen right in front of him. Enraged, Mephi accuses Kyo of taking his item, and with the item in his hands, Kyo realizes nothing happened. Before they can recover, 2 nightmares rush toward them. Kyo tells them to get inside the house. There's no point fighting the nightmares, and he has an idea for getting past that place. The students successfully hide, and the nightmares remain outside the house. Now safe, they want to know how they will get out of that place. He says they will find out the next day, and when the time is right, they should listen to what he has to say. The next day, the village chief is furious because they destroyed another guardian spirit. No matter what they do, he insists they must be eliminated for destroying the nightmare village. Kyo asks if they really live in that place, to which the chief replies that they've lived there for generations. With things as they are, Kyo declares there's only one truth about that village. The chief doesn't understand what the boy means. Pointing at them, Kyo reveals that none of those people are the village's original inhabitants. All of them are, in fact, the class that was wiped out by monsters in the village. They've been trapped there since they entered and cannot leave. The chief says that makes no sense and accuses Kyo of fabricating stories. However, Kyo has evidence to prove his claim. With one of the stones in hand, the chief says Kyo has committed a grave offense and deserves punishment. Not just him, but every student has a stone in their hands. The chief is horrified because those stones are what protect them, and now they will be punished by God for what they've done. In truth, the stones sustain that world, and if they're destroyed, the village will collapse. Kyo orders his classmates to destroy the stones. As soon as they are broken, cracks begin to appear in the sky. The man's memories start returning, recalling his promise to the director to bring everyone back. They were enthusiastic students who wanted to go to college, but they ended up entering the nightmare village. They were all attacked on the same day. He tried to keep his classmates from panicking, but by then, they had all been transformed. Now he was the village leader. Finally, he remembers everything that happened. He was the monitor of his class. A player has uncovered the village's secret, and the rewards will be calculated individually. The player's teleportation is about to begin. The monitor of the other class thanks them all for their efforts. Yan wants to know how Kyo figured everything out, but Kyo says he'll explain everything once they return. Time passes, and they wonder why they're still in the village thinking they had completed the mission. A new mission has appeared for the 5 who destroyed the stones. They must recover in the heart of nightmares. It's an E-level difficulty mission. Kyo is now level 5 with a strength of 101 points. The rest of the students have returned, leaving only Kyo and a few others still there. If this is really the case, they must have received a secret mission, which alone will guarantee them spots in the best universities. However, it's undoubtedly dangerous, and they might not be able to complete it. Except for Kyo, the others are only level 3. Attempting that mission is practically impossible for them to succeed. One of the girls asks if breaking the stones was necessary to reveal the truth. Yan, on the other hand, thinks Kyo wanted his classmates to undertake this secret mission with him. Mafei doesn't think that's the case, but being competitive, he wants to complete the mission before Kyo. Omega's hand emerges on the rooftop. It doesn't take long for several others to appear as well, intent on finishing off the students. They shout furiously that the students must die. 4 is a formidable number, and Yan doesn't think they'll be able to handle them, so they coordinate their abilities to withstand the onslaught. Mafei is the first to attack, dealing 10 damage to one of them. He's still dissatisfied that his attack can't finish off a monster in a single strike. The killer says she's almost out of mana, and Zhu is nearly out of health, but Kyo finishes the nightmare, gaining 1 attribute point. Zhu warns that 2 more are approaching. The monsters are already very close to him. With a few strikes, he takes them down before they hit the ground, earning more attribute points. In front of him, there's a core. As expected for this stage, the rewards are satisfying. It's a restricted item for mages, increasing damage by 5%, so he considers giving it to Yang. Zhu praises their teamwork while Mafei tries to draw attention to himself, but Tuao urges them to keep moving forward. He only needs to take down 1 more to level up, and maybe he'll get some equipment for himself. This excites him greatly. He believes the heart of the nightmare must be with one of them, so they should keep defeating them. One of his steps activates a trap. The ground collapses, swallowing all the students. They fall helplessly into the hole. Kyo manages to land safely. He's unsure where they are, but notices the ground beneath him is soft. He was on top of Yang, who was still wondering why the ground felt so soft. With everyone accounted for, he checks to see if they're all okay, and they are. The stench is overwhelming like sewage, and Zhu suggests it might be from the bodies that fall there, but the healer says that's not it. The smell comes from somewhere else. Then her colleagues see what she had noticed. Before them stands a massive nightmare. The Nightmare King with 1000 health, 65 strength, 20 defense, 60 agility, and skills like compulsion and nightmare realm. It's asleep, and the system warns that waking it will put it into a frenzy. Kyo is nervous about the power of a secret boss. With that strength, Zhu wouldn't be able to block even a single attack, and they hope the nightmare's heart isn't with it. Mafei considers leaving the nightmare asleep, but Krav says they have a chance. He has a total of 202 attack power, and with his ring, the first strike could take 1/3 of the nightmare's health. He only needs to get its weak spot 3 or 4 times, but he acknowledges the risk. Yang thinks he's delusional for saying they have a chance against a monster like that, but Kyo insists that if they combine their abilities, they can win, as its defense is low. Hearing this, Mafei realizes they need to distract the monster, and Krav says that if they do, he'll be able to land clean hits. Kyo also warns that this is risky since the monster is faster than all of them and strong enough to take them out in a single blow. Even so, they're confident Kyo's strategy will work and agree to go along with it. Mafei cautions him not to show off as this boss is incredibly strong. Still, Kyo remains confident and tells them to relax. After resting for a bit, it's time to put the plan into action. As long as it isn't attacked, the nightmare won't wake up, so the first strike has to be precise. On top of the monster, Kyo notices something that catches his attention. One part of it glows brightly. Perhaps that's its weak spot. He begins preparing his staff to strike. The ring's effect is activated, boosting his attack by 50%. Moreover, the strike is critical, and the boss loses 508 health points in a single hit. His friends watch in disbelief at how much damage the mage dealt. Kyo destroyed the nightmare's heart, and the mission is now changing. They must destroy the nightmare as the mission is now rank A. The boss rises angrily from its slumber. Everyone should be prepared and act according to the plan. Seeing the players, the nightmare calls them evil humans. The nightmare is truly much larger than all of them. It was Mafei's turn to attack and draw the monster's attention. Indeed, he was already fully engaged in doing his part of the strategy. His barrage of attacks landed on the boss. He was completely dissatisfied with the difference in power between himself and Kyo, and wanted to attack the boss as many times as necessary, but each of his strikes only took 1 point of health away. In response, the nightmare taunted him, saying it would grant his wish to be the first to die. Preparing himself, Mafei shouted for it to come at him if it had the courage. It was time for Yang and Zhu to take their positions. Both the sand containment and the shield were conjured. The boss's attack seemed to have been blocked. Even so, Mafei took damage, and the healer couldn't keep up. She couldn't hold on much longer. Kyo needed to act or Mafei would be flattened. Kyo was already on his way to perform his part of the plan. The nightmare was struck again, taking 182 points of damage. With its health running low, it activated its Nightmare Realm ability. Kyo was surprised and waited to see what would happen. The nightmare roared, and its shadows expanded. This caused it to deal area damage, and his friends couldn't defend themselves. This couldn't be allowed to happen. Kyo was certain the other class got stuck there because of this attack. Hoping to end the spell, he struck again, dealing the same amount of damage. Only one more attack was needed to finish off the boss. Kyo advanced toward it to end everything. The healer urged him to be cautious, warning that she had no mana left. Knowing this, he prepared his final attack. He managed to deal the last bit of damage needed to defeat the boss. For the first time, that boss was defeated, earning him 30 ability points and an additional 10 points from his talent. By leveling up, he gained another 10 points. The mission was finally complete, and the rewards would be distributed individually. His teammates could hardly believe they had managed to deal with the situation. Shidao received a rank D talent, and Zhu received a rank C talent. Yang earned a rank E talent, and Mafe got a rank D talent as well. Kyo was the top performer, receiving a rank B magic book and 50 experience points. Although they couldn't use it immediately, the Nightmare's soul might still yield something interesting. From it emerged a rank B sword, which increased attack by 100 points, ignored 30% of defense, and boosted sword damage by 20%. For Kyo, this was bad luck. He didn't want a rank B sword. Since he couldn't use it, he gave it to Mafe, who hadn't expected such generosity. Mafe pointed out that the item could be sold for enough money to buy a house in the capital, but Kyo didn't care about that, and checked to see if there were any other items. Looking at his status window, he realized his strength was astounding, but his health was still low, making him very fragile. The restriction of his talent prevented other stats from increasing, so he needed to find a way to overcome this issue. He knew he had to become more resilient and cautious. Finally, the students were ready to be transported back. The 5 of them returned to where they had been before. Their sudden appearance caused an uproar among the students in the gymnasium. The director informed them that they had been missing for 2 days and wanted to know what happened, since he hadn't expected them to return. Hearing everything, he remarked that they were very fortunate and that this experience would open many doors for them. The others were thrilled that their class had so many geniuses. Even so, Mafe remained competitive. Convinced he could surpass Kyo with the item he had received, he just needed to level up a bit. A man rushed in, informing the director that representatives from 2 prestigious universities were there and that were specifically looking for those 5 students. The director hadn't even reported the incident, yet the university representatives were already aware of it. So, the director welcomed them into the gymnasium. The 2 were Professors Peng and Pei. Looking at the students, Pei congratulated them for completing the secret mission. He announced that Jindu University would like to have them and offered to write recommendation letters immediately if they wished. The other professor argued that you shouldn't do that without conducting a proper test, and the 2 began to argue. Pei is from Hokkien University and tells them not to worry. The test only serves to see how they behave in certain situations and whether they are adaptable. As a necromancer, Kyo cannot show the abilities of his class, but he wants to go to Jindu to learn more about his parents. The professor then asks who would like to be tested first. Mafe volunteers, saying he is a level 5 swordsman with a B-rank talent. Being at level 5 after only completing beginner training is impressive, the professor thinks. Pei praises the boy and asks him to try and hit him, noting that he is level 25 and a marksman. The student advances, asking the professor to be careful. He delivers his strike, which hits the magical barrier directly. The tip of the sword pierced the defense, to the professor's surprise. He complimented the boy's technique, and Mafe thanked him for the praise. They estimate that his strength must be at 35 and his agility also quite high. These comments drive the students wild as they are deeply impressed. Faced with such talent, the professors realize they'll compete for him. Both ask if he has chosen which university he wants to attend, as they are eager to accept him. However, Mafe wants to see the others tested first, though in truth, he wants to go wherever Kyo goes. Next up is the healer, who steps forward. She uses her healing magic in front of them. With it, she can heal her entire team, even though she's only level 4. The paladin's shield is also quite durable. Even at level 4, she can reflect part of the damage. Her talent allows her to return 20% of the absorbed damage. For someone tasked with defense, such a talent is incredibly useful. Pei assumes Yang is also a paladin, but in reality, he's a mage. A big guy like him being a mage is as if his class were swapped with the paladins. His test begins, and the boy gets ready. Seeing this, the professor has no idea what Yang is doing, as he doesn't sense any magic. After a few moments, Yang uses his skill to make the ground explode. A large explosion occurs in the middle of the gym. The professor couldn't sense the ability, and even at level 25, he lost 3 health points, something dangerous for someone in his level. They'll need to keep an eye on the principal as 5 prodigies emerge from this class. Perhaps Yang is one too. Finally, it's Kyo's turn. He's a level 7 necromancer, and his talent classification is unknown, 2 levels above the others, but the professor assumes his talent must be low. They'll conduct the test first and discuss his talent afterward. He waits to see the undead KO can summon, but definitely doesn't want to be injured by another beginner. Seeing KO approach, the professor didn't expect the necromancer to act this way, as it doesn't align with his class. It might be inexperienced. Only then does the professor realize a right hook is heading for his face. Curious to see how strong a mage can be, he decides to let the punch land. The strike is strong enough to hurt him. Not only that, but he's thrown across the floor. There's not a single person in the gym who isn't shocked by this outcome. The principal, like them, is equally incredulous. A beginner student managed to knock down a level 25 professor with a single blow. The other professor believes Pad went easy on the student as necromancers aren't physically strong. There must be something wrong with KO, who nearly knocked him out with one punch. Among the students, the discussion grows about how a necromancer shouldn't have such strength. Peng is grateful he wasn't the one to take the rookie's hit, or he'd be spitting teeth. KO asks if the test is over, and it is, but they can't complete his evaluation without seeing him summon undead. He then says he wants to excel in physical combat like a warrior, but his ultimate goal is to go to Jingdu. This hasn't happened before, someone specializing in a class other than their own, so Peng decides to talk to the principal first. On the phone, he tells the principal that the rookie is terrifying and wants to train as a warrior, even though he's a necromancer. Despite being level 7, he threw a level 25 professor into the air. Now, the principal wants all 5 students at any cost. Thinking he might lose him, Peng wanted to invite KO personally and requested a video call. Japing Yang introduced himself as the director of Jingdu University and expressed his hopes that KO would join them. But before he could finish his presentation, KO announced he would join the university. Peng listened in dismay, having lost the greatest talent, and hoped to at least recruit one of the others. The director suggested that since they were from the same class, they could all go together, and the group agreed, much to Pei's despair. Peng was overjoyed. This was undoubtedly the highlight of his career. However, KO had some additional questions for the director and wanted to know if he had heard of his father, KO Anking. The director was surprised to learn that KO was Anking and Bai Shixi's son, which explained why he looked familiar. The boy wanted to know if the director knew where his parents were now. The director explained that they had been his students more than a decade ago and were extraordinary individuals. He knew they had disappeared but hadn't heard from them since their graduation. They had spoken of a secret world, and the director advised KO to go there, as there might be something waiting for him. The director promised to send the admission letters, soon would advise them to pass through the worlds related to their classes to avoid unnecessary scrutiny. With that, he wished them good luck and bid them farewell. A week passed, and the students were preparing for their next test. Today they would enter a world specifically designed for mages. To succeed, they would need to work together, as their mental abilities would be tested. Now it was time to reveal the criteria for passing. Before a portal, blue flames rose. KO asked Yang if he was ready, and Yang replied that practice was better than theory, but the more people involved, the more dangerous it became. He suggested that KO accompany him. They could attempt this challenge multiple times, although the rewards would be cumulative. Yang seemed excited about what lay ahead. The guide greeted them, announcing that a 2-player world was being prepared. The world selected for them was the Cave of 10,000 Poisons. Before the guide could explain the rules, KO rushed ahead, leaving Yang surprised. He did know instructions were provided, and Yang pointed out that they weren't asked how KO managed to clear the skeleton cave. Yang assumed that if KO fought his way through the skeletons, he must be a fool. In that place, there was an evil tribe capable of poisoning people without them realizing it. The poisonous worms would eat their victims from the inside out until nothing remained. Their task was to locate the tribe and destroy the worms. Rewards would be determined based on how they completed the challenge. The mission required 5 players, so the system paired them with 3 others. One of them warned the pair not to slow them down, but a girl scolded him, insisting he be more polite. She introduced herself as Fang Yuan, a fire mage. Her younger brother, Fang Sun, was also a fire mage, and the third member was Long Chang. Yang introduced himself and so did KO, expressing hope that they could work together to succeed. At the entrance, there appeared to be instructions, but the rude one just wanted to destroy the door and move forward. However, his attack had no effect. The door seemed immune to magic, and inscribed on it were the words, "Morality and integrity promote peace." If it was immune to magic, perhaps it wasn't immune to brute force. The girl appeared to have solved the riddle. With a single punch, KO made the door disappear. The rude one looked foolish, and the girl was incredulous. She had solved the riddle, but the door was already open. KO explained he just wanted to test if physical strength could break it. He hadn't expected it to be so fragile. In the next room, there was another door surrounded by various flowers. The flowers didn't seem normal, and the group was urged to be cautious, but Yang had already gotten entangled. Now, everyone was poisoned, losing 3 health points per minute. They needed to leave quickly, or they wouldn't survive. With his low health, Kyo wouldn't last even half an hour in that condition. The words on the door seemed meaningless, so they rushed toward it. There was no time for another riddle. They needed to act immediately. Once again, Kyo struck the door that blocked their path. Without an answer, brute force had to suffice. Thanks to this, they escaped the room. Although the place was meant to test their mental abilities, they felt they hadn't yet needed to use their brains. Now they had completed the first part of the task. A child greets them, introducing herself as Xiaodong. She asks if they come from outside. Then she notices they are all poisoned, and explains that the poison comes from the bee and flower. They need to follow her to the cave if they want the antidote, because if the poison spreads too much, there will be nothing they can do. Unsure of what else to do, they decide to follow her. At her village, the girl introduces them to her parents, explaining whom she brought with her. The parents ask who they are, and the child replies that they are outsiders and poisoned. Hearing this, they are invited into the house to be treated for the poison. It doesn't take long for her to bring out the 5-venom soup for them to drink. The appearance of the soup is anything but appealing. At first, none of them have the courage to try it, but Kyo can't afford to hesitate, as he has only half his health left, so he downs the soup in one go. Afterward, he declares it's actually quite good, and that he is no longer poisoned, encouraging his companions to do the same. He then asks the child about the tribe. She doesn't know much, but the patriarch told them to avoid the outside world and not use their magic unnecessarily. Now that they are cured, her mother asks them to leave since they aren't accustomed to hosting outsiders. However, the child protests, saying they shouldn't leave because they rarely have visitors. She tells them not to listen to her mother and that they can stay as long as they want. With that, Kyo agrees to stay as everyone has low health, though he finds the family's behavior strange. The child then bids them goodnight, leaving them to rest in the house. She personally escorts her parents outside. That night, the full moon would rise and soon it would begin. The villagers gather in one place. They are performing a sacrifice to the insects to ensure good harvests and protection from illness. At the altar, the priestess drips a single drop of what looks like tomato juice. A massive swarm of insects emerges from the area. They begin attacking the people tied up as sacrifices. In no time, nothing remains of them but skeletons. The players see this and are horrified. They realize they need to escape quickly. Ken is strong but lacks area of effect attacks. At the ritual, the priestess notices they are being watched. She orders someone to deal with the intruders but to bring them back alive. Back at the cabin, they try to figure out what to do in this situation. If the villagers find out they are there to eliminate the insects, they will be attacked immediately. While they talk, Kian hears a noise and asks what it could be. Insects have entered the cabin and are everywhere. To protect themselves, the fire mage uses one of her techniques. Kian joins in the attack, but the enemies are too weak for him to gain any points. He realizes that if he could, it would be too good to be true. Inside the cabin, Yang uses his sand technique. Seeing this, Kian praises him for combining 2 talents, but it drained almost all of Yang's mana. A warrior from the tribe approaches, remarking on how tough they are. Because of what they've done, he says they will become food for the insects they revere. While he speaks, Yang uses the same technique, but it only takes 11 health points from the warrior. It's almost useless, as the warrior is level 10, with 40 strength and 20 defense. NPC stats remain hidden until they take damage. Seeing this, they doubt they can overcome him as he is as strong as a boss, but Kyo doesn't care, and wonders if this world operates differently from others. As the imminent attack approaches, the warrior doesn't think he'll take any significant damage. Yet with a single punch, he loses 121 health points, enough to put him on alert. Angered at being hurt by a mere human, he uses his insect bite ability. Now he's much stronger and has significantly better defense. He imagines that no one can hurt him in this form. Still, Kyo isn't the least bit impressed. After a brief session of slaps to the face, the warrior is humbly prostrated with only 23 health points left. Now it's time for him to spill the beans about the sacrifice and who Priestess is. He explains that it's a pact with the insects to perform sacrifices every full moon, and that their queen resides in the green stone. That's why they were healed to become the next sacrifices. Xiao now wants to know why Xiao calls the place by a different name, but the man claims he doesn't know who she is. There is only one person with the name Dong there, and she is their matriarch. Thanking him for his cooperation, Kyo lets the man go on his way. Changing his mind, Kyo decides to finish him off and collect a skill point. With that, he levels up and earns an item, the Sage's Protection, which can prevent a fatal blow once. An S-rank item is invaluable in any situation. Now the group discusses their next move as the villagers will soon discover the man is dead, and dealing with the matriarch won't be easy. The mission requires them to eliminate the insects so they don't have to confront the villagers directly. Therefore, their best chance is to act before the matriarch realizes what has happened. Walking along, they find the path clear and proceed. On the ground, they see the bodies of the child's would-be parents realizing that their own. That explains their strange behavior. Not everyone there is evil. Combining their attacks, they attempt to destroy the stone where the queen resides. The combination results in an explosion. Before them, a massive crater is revealed. That should have been enough to end the insects, but the mission continues. Behind them, a woman speaks, commenting on how unruly they have been. If they are there, it must mean her warrior is no longer alive. If this is the matriarch, Kyo wants to know if she is Shudong. She asks if he dislikes her current form and wonders if she should transform into a child again. As a child once more, she asks which form he prefers. Her plan was to make him her companion, but since he has killed so many insects, there is nothing she can do now. Kyo demands to know why she treated members of her own tribe that way. They were her parents. To her, they were merely two useless, disobedient individuals. Unfortunately, Kyo is an orphan, and this deeply angers him. Noticing his anger, she tells him not to be upset. He will be reunited with them soon enough. Suddenly, a swarm of insects appears, ready to attack. The voracious cloud heads straight for Kyo. The fire mage says they need to help him and begins casting her magic. But before they can act, the warrior from earlier attacks them. He declares they shouldn't interfere with the matriarch and should face him instead. He is level 10 with 50 points in strength and 30 in defense and agility. The insects are numerous, and Kyo is taking steady damage. If his agility and defense matched his strength, this would be much easier. He considers using the brave heart now, but decides to keep fighting since he can survive a fatal blow. As he gets closer, the matriarch assumes he is eager to become insect food. However, she didn't anticipate what happened next. With a single strike, Kyo leaves a gaping hole in her body, but it wasn't fatal. She has 30 points in strength, 20 in defense, 50 in agility, and is level 10. She is also a rare NPC. Her stats are low, so there must be another reason she is rare. While lamenting the damage she has taken, her agility increases by 8 points. Kyo braces himself for her next move. Her strike was devastating. Before he realizes it, her hand has already pierced his chest. Her agility surged suddenly, leaving him with just 9 health points. Once he dies, she plans to use his skin as a souvenir. Yang is worried about his friend's condition, as Kyo is in serious trouble. While Yang is distracted, the warrior takes the opportunity to launch a potentially fatal attack. This reinforces the idea that they shouldn't ignore him. Yang casts his magic again, to which the warrior scoffs, claiming he takes no damage from fat people. He says those attacks only tickle. Surprisingly, the sand turns red. It explodes, dealing 312 points of damage to the warrior. Now the warrior is much slimmer, having used a fat-burning ability. Free of his enemy, Yang rushes to assist Kyo, who is more concerned about the fact that his friend is now a skinny guy. Even Yang doesn't fully understand it. He just got angry, lost weight, and now has almost 300 points in spirit. This is extremely high, and interferes with how he uses his talents. Knowing this, he grabbed the matriarch and asked his friend to use that technique one more time. However, doing so would likely cause him to perish in the process. He told his friend to trust him and to act rather than talk. Trusting him, his friend began preparing the technique. The matriarch begged him to let her go, not wanting to meet her end there. A powerful explosion engulfed them both. His companions were anxious about what might have happened. The item saved him, and with the courage of his act, he gained a talent, strong contract, ranked A. Each point of strength now adds 10 health points, effectively solving his low health problem. Yang approached, worried and curious, as his friend was supposed to have died, but was revived. As they talked, they realized the matriarch hadn't dropped any items, meaning she was likely still alive. Amid the smoke, she reappeared, saying the two of them were truly troublesome. Now was the time for them to witness her true beauty. Her hybrid form was level 15, with 130 strength, a defense, and 100 agility. Chao asked his friend to use the magic again, but his spirit had dropped to just 48 points. A system warning announced that the boss had just become stronger than anticipated and advised them to leave immediately due to the risk. Yang wanted to flee, but Chao hadn't considered it for even a moment. Once again, the system warned them to escape and restart the custom world. But Chao reminded Yang that the director had tasked them with completing it, and that's exactly what they do today. The matriarch liked this decision. Confident she finished them off quickly, the two clashed fiercely, both losing health in the process. Exchanging blows, the matriarch took more damage than she dealt. Now she questioned what Sao was made of. He shouldn't still be alive. Even at level 8, he was stronger than expected, almost as if he were the boss of this place. A mage wasn't supposed to have this kind of strength. Amid the fight, she asked him to pause and demanded to know if Baiji had sent him. It could only be him, she said, as Baiji was her creator, but Chao had no idea who that was. Using his staff, he struck again, dealing 213 damage. The name Baiji seemed to strike a nerve with her. She muttered that it couldn't be possible, that he couldn't have that name or have defeated her. With his victory, Chao earned 15 skill points and 75 experience points, leveling up once again. The stage was finally completed, and the rewards were being calculated based on performance. Xuan and Yuan received an E rank, Long an F, Yang an A, and Cao an S. After receiving the rewards, Cao was now level 10 and nearly at the initial stage, strong enough to enter dungeons alone. He received a B-ranked item usable at level 11, which increases health by 800 points. Additionally, he obtained a mysterious magic cube with some kind of sealed power inside. The cube formed a connection with Cao, allowing him to use abilities from others as long as they weren't more than 10 levels higher than him. However, it still had one sealed ability. This item was already excellent, so the sealed ability must be even better. A portal appeared and the guide congratulated them for completing the Cave of 10,000 Poisons. As an additional reward, she increased their spirit by 20%. It was a great reward, though 20% of 0 is still 0. The others thanked Tao, as it was thanks to him that they were alive. When asked which university he would attend, he replied, Jingdu. Hearing this, they decided to go there as well. The guide seemed pleased with their progress. At level 10, Chao's strength was 202, and his total health was 4,140, thanks to his items. This didn't include the cumulative skills he had gained. Back at the school, they were welcomed by their peers. Mafei couldn't believe Kuei was already level 10. After all, in the mage world, there are fewer monsters, making steady progress more difficult. The girls, on the other hand, couldn't believe the other boy was Yang, as he looked entirely different. However, Yang was eager to regain his weight, as he didn't feel safe looking so slim in the other world. Since they already had their spot secured, someone asked if they still needed to take an exam. Besides, the exam day was important, gathering the best students, and the winner would also receive an A-ranked item. Dafei said he would participate and take first place among the warriors. He heard from his father that this year's first place winner will receive an S-level item. Knowing the prize is good, Kuei decides to win the competition. Spying on him are some people who assume he is weak because he is at level 10. They descend toward him to capture him. Standing before him, they block his path. Not knowing who they are or why they are there, he asks if he can help them. They want to know if he is Kuei, the one who defeated Sundong in the Cave of 10,000 Poisons. Both are assassins, but weaker than him. They might be related to Baizi, as she had mentioned before. Now he regrets not interrogating her further. He then says his name is Mafia, and claims they have the wrong person, prompting one of them to apologize for the inconvenience. However, the other calls him foolish for believing that. It was time to take him back in case he was a mage. In the blink of an eye, the two vanish. Even so, Kuei shows no reaction of surprise. The two attack him simultaneously. He doesn't even bother to dodge, clearly lying about his identity. Before they can complete their thought, Kuei was already prepared to attack the first one. With one strike, he takes away 197 health points from the unsuspecting attacker. The other realizes his enemy is strong, as even he cannot do that to his companion. Indeed, this man is no mage. Looking at the remaining fool, Kuei asks if he is ready for round 2. The man begins apologizing to Mafia, explaining he mistook him for someone else. He admits he is just a weak cog in an organization ranking below 7,000 and hopes the matter can end there. A level 18 Ista-san ranking among the 7,000 strongest in their organization highlights its power. He needs to let them go, or the retaliation will be worse. Continuing his path, Kuei says he hopes they find who they are looking for and offers to help, which they decline. Baizi is a divine white beast with horns, worshipped for exorcising demons from the land. Searching the internet, he finds no information about this organization. Soon his identity will be exposed, and with his current strength, he cannot defend himself properly. He needs to take the exam for his safety and head to Jingdu. As the director, there is the most powerful swordsman in the land, which would make him feel safer. If the university isn't safe, then no other place will be. Now he focuses his attention on the magic cube and what it can do. Perhaps it's an item that connects different worlds, which is why it was given to him. It raises more questions than answers, and Kuei thinks about his parents. The apparent leader of this organization is atop a building. They report that their information was wrong, and that the person they found was indeed very strong. That result is useless to her. For now, they will ignore her death as there are more important matters to attend to in the city. Days later, Kuei was with the university director, seeking to know if he knows anything about the cube. He explains it was found in a specialized world and appears sealed, but he wants to know if it can be opened somehow. The director says it can be opened with a password, but without it, they can use the key of all locks. This item can break the seal without damaging the cube's contents, as the seal isn't very strong. Hearing this, Kuei asks where he can find this item. He can find it in the Machine Kingdom, but is warned that it is an open-world realm, and he must be cautious of other players. In that realm, there was a war between humans and machines as the machines had developed consciousness. In the end, they sign a peace treaty, and the area where he is located is human territory. To obtain the item, he needs a mission designated by Hu Jun, lord of those lands. The only question is how to find him. Beside him, an old man passes by, lost in thought about solving a mathematical problem. Distracted, the old man bumps into someone larger than him. Tried to get up from the ground, he apologizes for the incident. The young man mocks the old man, saying he must do this on purpose or be incapable of walking properly. Claiming he was hurt in the collision, he demands compensation. Harassing the old man, he insists on being paid for the bump. Intervening Ku tells the young man he is brave to extort an old man in broad daylight. Defiantly, the young man tells Ku to stay out of it unless he plans to help the old man pay. But evil cannot escape the law. His punch was already inevitably close to hitting him. Thus, the clown was thrown far away. The remaining companion is paralyzed with fear. Terrified, he apologized and said that he and the other one would leave the two alone and hope there would be no retaliation. Without lingering in the place, both fled, scared, while the old man recovered himself. Then Kui asked if the old man was okay, but he said he didn't have much money. However, he declined, saying it wasn't in his nature to accept such things, and the old man thanked him, regretting not being able to pay for what he did. He continued saying he didn't need anything, but would like to know how to find the lord of those lands because he needed an item called the key to all locks, and he had heard he could get it from him. The young man's luck is great, because the old man can help him with that. He also warned that it wouldn't be easy to obtain items from him, but Kiwei said he had just used a little over 1% of what he could do, and he was confident he would succeed. Elsewhere, the clowns talk about whether the lord of the lands had found what he was looking for. He couldn't say, but that player was the strongest he had ever encountered. A young woman said that Kui was still giving lectures, and no matter how, he should be brought to her. The man said he would do so for Lady Monde. After walking for some time, the old man said the lord of the lands lived inside that enormous house, and Ke thanked him. It was an impressive mansion, and he wanted to know how that old man wandered through it freely. Turning to ask, he realized the old man had disappeared. Anyway, he would continue searching for him to obtain the item. Opening the doors, he was met with a grand hall. In what would be the throne sat the old man, and beside him were the ones who had troubled him. Now, he introduced himself as the lord of the city of machines, and those two were his strongest guards in the entire city. However, he had staged that scene because he needed to find someone stronger than his guards. At the moment, that person was him, Kui. As long as he helped, he would gladly give the key to all locks. At that moment, a secret mission began. He would present a seminar tomorrow about his research, and the robots that wanted to steal it wouldn't miss the opportunity. Kui thought he wanted protection, but the old man said no. He wanted him to defeat the two missions, to destroy her and her heart. Since they were just robots, he accepted the mission. The next day, the old man was presenting his seminar. With technological advancement, man was better understanding the mysteries of nature. It was still unknown how much of life could be digitized, but artificial intelligence was heading in that direction. And there was also the obstacle of reproduction. His question was whether a robot could develop, could grow. During the lecture, Kui didn't understand anything and just waited for the robots to show up. Above, a glass panel began to crack. Through the opening created, a robot descended from the air. It said metal was better than flesh and bones, and that the professor should embrace this truth. As soon as the robot arrived, security was called. One of the guards said that this wasn't a place for him, and his name was Scram. There was no response. Instead, the robot disappeared, reappearing only to strike him in the stomach. The others who were there to contain him watched helplessly. Thus, it didn't take long for him to handle the rest of the guards. Meanwhile, Kui observed everything and said it was a very disrespectful sight. The old man said they were there for him, and that this time he would go to the kingdom of machines. But with that, he bet everything he had on Kui. Scram subdued everyone, claiming his body was better because it wasn't biological. Through the same hole above, another figure began to descend. It was the Queen of Machines, and she ordered the professor to return with her. He agreed on the condition that she order the robots to stop. Binding him with chains, she said that if he had been obedient before, it wouldn't have come to this. The robot told Mon to leave immediately, as he would stay to have some more fun. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared with the professor. With them out of the scene, Kui addressed the robot that had stayed behind, and said he had heard him claim to have the strongest physique. Scram says that humans cannot understand the beauty of mechanical transformation, so Ko decides to attack him first. In response, Scram invites the young man to join the mechanical revolution and acquire an enhanced body. The first strike lands, costing Scram 306 health points. His stats are formidable, but they pose no challenge to Kui. Realizing the situation, Scram is now heavily injured. Kui thanks him for the invitation, but says he doesn't need it. Scram still can't believe a human managed to punch through his body. He wants to know how it's possible, and Kui replies that he simply clenched his fists and struck. In truth, however, Kui possesses the ancient sacred body of the human race. Continuing, Kui immobilizes the robot with one foot pinning him to the ground. With another strike, Kui demands that Scram take him to the machine kingdom if he doesn't want to become scrap metal. After this brief exchange, Scram begins leading Ku to the Queen's location. Scram assumes the professor allowed himself to be captured to guide Ku to the heart's location. The robot is terrified of the young man's strength and doesn't understand why the Queen let him in. With more questions than answers, they continue their journey. In the Machine Kingdom, the Queen has the professor in custody. She apologizes to him for bringing him there in such a rough manner. The professor responds that he will not betray humanity to join her cause. However, the Queen urges him to stop being stubborn and look around. In front of them, something is being built and perfected. That is undoubtedly the heart he spoke of. It was both human and machine, a hybrid between the two, defying the term robot. The Queen prefers to call the process ascension, as the flesh is weak and the machine is strong. It was time for the professor to join the glorious evolution, but he calls her a traitor for abandoning her humanity to serve the machine's purposes. Hearing this, she asks what he just said. Several people begin falling from above as she asks the professor to observe. They scream for help as they are torn apart. Mechanical arms emerge from the robot, cutting through the people. Their bodies are absorbed by the hybrid heart. Meanwhile, in the machine city, Kao has already landed and is facing several robots. They see him as an intruder. Fighting them, Kao finds them weak but strong enough to earn attribute points. He hadn't expected this and was quite pleased with the result. Eventually, there were no more functioning robots before him. The professor, witnessing the atrocity, declares that the Queen is truly a monster. However, the Queen retorts that his anger will solve nothing. She explains that the heart is called Marta and is actually a failure. They had intended for the robot to grow organically. Instead, they inadvertently created a monster that consumes flesh with an ever-growing appetite. It started with one person, and now they don't know its limit. She offers the professor a choice. He can try to solve the problem or ignore it, knowing they will continue feeding it with people. There's only one person he can count on, and that's Kao. A robot approaches and reports that a human with the ancestral sacred body has invaded the area. Hearing this, the Queen asks if it's the same person her subordinate mentioned in a message. Before he can respond, a piece of metal flies into the room. Kao has just arrived. Finally, the person everything depends on has arrived. The Queen wants to confirm if this is the person with the ancestral body. She congratulates Kao for entering her kingdom, noting that the warrior he defeated was one of the strongest there. She hadn't expected him to be defeated by a human. Mon is a rare level NPC, level 15, with excellent attributes. Looking at her, Kao asks if it's embarrassing to be defeated by a human with the ancestral sacred body and whether she wants to avenge him, without answering her guard's advance to attack him. This is great for Kao, since he can earn more free points easily. A single blow is enough to take down the first guard. With the same ease, the second guard is also destroyed. This mortal body is far stronger than those altered by the Queen. Seeing this, the Queen considers that the ancestral body might indeed be real and thinks he would be incredibly powerful if modified by her. He would undoubtedly be the strongest warrior in the world. Meanwhile, Kao asks the professor if he is all right. Already standing, he ordered the boy to look in a specific direction. It's the mechanical heart, level 15 and without attributes, but it seems to be undergoing a metamorphosis. He also said they are using people to feed the machine. Seeing that, he would destroy the machine even if the professor hadn't asked. At the moment, the Queen only thinks they need to defeat the one with the sacred ancestral body. Then she said he should abandon his weak body and join the evolution. There was no reaction from him, and she is trying to figure out what he will do. Faster than she could notice, he had already passed her. It didn't take much longer for him to stand before the heart ready to destroy it. Now the Queen is desperate, begging him to stop and not do anything to Marta. Her cries were in vain as the first blow hit the heart squarely. Realizing what could happen, she rushes toward them to stop Kao from completing his mission. Seeing her approach, he prepared to react. He told her not to interfere. About to be struck, all of her systems warned her to move away from him immediately as the risk was immense. Even so, she was hit, losing 288 health points. The impact was so strong that she broke through what was behind her. Although it was a powerful blow, the Queen still has plenty of health remaining. An impressive force, she absolutely has to have this person on her side in the Machine Kingdom. Without further distractions, Kao turns his attention back to the heart. Once again, he punches it without resistance. Angry at what she did to the people, he only wishes for it to break quickly. After successive strikes, the heart explodes into several pieces. As a result, he gained 3 attribute points and 100 experience points. The room is now covered in a tomato-like liquid spread everywhere from the heart's destruction. This made the Queen furious as Marta represented hope for the robots, but the only thing on his mind was the number of human lives lost. He is clearly a human who believes he is a robot, and he is an excellent lion. Despite everything, what the Queen desires is to talk to Kao. Even though he is strong, his strength is still insignificant. The true Queen would forgive him for everything, as long as he joined her. With that, he has a chance to redeem himself and atone for his sins. Kao believed that Mande was the leader of the machines and the queen. Nearby, the professor tells the boy not to be deceived, but he has no interest in this mechanical evolution and is quite fond of his body. Looking at him, Mande is certain that this will change when he meets the queen. It is Kao's desire to meet her, so Mande guides him through the place. Through metal corridors, they continue walking. Mande points them in the right direction. Opening one of his hands, he releases a small robot. It flew discreetly and positioned itself at the back of Kao's neck. This tiny robot can infect people, turning them into machines. The robot mosquito is in position. Mande is confident that this will work, and that the queen will reward him for the feat. In position, the robot prepares its small drill, but at the slightest discomfort, Kao strikes the robot. As soon as he did, he realized Mande's scheme and turned to attack him. Mande feigned ignorance. Before he could say anything, he had already been struck. The blow was strong, but he did his best to stay on his feet. Kao is contemplating the strength of the level 15 NPC. They are not so easy to handle. Mande is furious and insists on asking if he doesn't want to meet the robot queen. Since he was attacked, he retaliated, and if he is correct, the queen must be nearby. If that's the case, Mande no longer needs to guide him. Given that, he accepts the fight and says he'll take him to the queen, even if it's just his remains. After all, the queen would make a new body for him anyway. Mande's robotic fist heads toward Kao, but Kao also lands a punch. It's useless. Mande's attacks are completely ineffective. He becomes increasingly intrigued by the strength of the sacred ancestral body. Grabbing one of Mande's arms, he said, "Scrap doesn't need to eat," striking him once more, causing him to lose even more health. Mande is cornered, unable to move. Meanwhile, Kao prepares another headbutt. It hits Mande so hard that his face begins to crack. The force of the impact sent him flying into the nearest wall, destroying it. What remained afterward was his robotic form. With almost no health left, he admitted to underestimating the human. But now, he would show Kao what he should have done from the start. That appearance didn't appeal to Kao, who would prefer a peaceful death over becoming something like that. The machine attempted one final strike against the young man. Not intending to take the blow for free, Kao also prepared a punch to hit the robot. The clash between the two resulted in a critical hit. As a result, Kao leveled up and gained a total of 25 attribute points. He had finally entered the initial stage. It was about time he reached that level. With this, he completed the mission and obtained the key to all locks. Even so, he wanted to find the queen, hoping she might have some interesting item. To access the next pavilion, a password was required. He tried a few times without success. If he had known this, Mande would still be alive. Now he had to find someone who knew the code. On the other side, the queen was waiting for him. Knowing how this had gone before, she wanted to understand why he was coming to her even after completing the mission. The door shattered into several pieces. When in doubt, violence is never the question, but it's always the answer. On the throne sat what appeared to be a human girl. Addressing her, he asked what she was doing in that place. She quickly realized this human was different, a little odd. Faced with her silence, he asked if she could speak and whether she had a name. Finally, she said she was the queen of the machine kingdom. This caught him off guard. An epic level NPC with unknown attributes and only 100,000 health. If he thought he was strong, that notion ended right then. With all that health, she could go to an A-rank world and take over the place. Aware of the risk, he apologized and said this poor and humble servant had taken a wrong turn and was already leaving. As soon as he turned his back, chains emerged from her body. Now he was trapped and could do little about it. The queen pulled in closer to herself. She was so strong that he couldn't move, but the queen told him not to fear, as she wouldn't harm him. Touching his head, she appeared to absorb his memories. Through this, she glimpsed what the outside world looked like. She already knew that the world she lived in wasn't real. It was just one virtual world among many others, soon to reset, and everything would return to how it was before. However, if it was a flaw, as long as she stayed in this room, she would remain the same, and she couldn't even recall how many times this had happened. After so much time, he was the first to come to her, and she wouldn't waste this chance. The young man asked if she had read his memories, but she said it was an exchange. It wasn't surprising that she had such a high level. Hearing this, he asked if the queen wanted to leave, and she said yes, but she could destroy him as he was just an 11th level human who couldn't defy the rules of that world. However, she explained it wasn't necessary to break the rules. With her hand, she struck his chest. The gesture surprised Kao, who didn't know what she was doing. Removing an object from within him, she said they could use the rules of the other world he spoke of. This was the queen's true heart, an S-rank item with a life of its own. It was meant for him to take as it would soon grow and become a version of her. Players could collect items. Through this, she could discover what the outside world was like. Kao asked if she was worried about what he might do once outside, but in his memories, she hadn't seen a single moment where he broke a promise. Besides, she wanted to know what life outside was like. This was an NPC with consciousness who wished to experience the real world. The queen asked if he had made his decision, and the young man said he had no choice. Hearing this, she thanked him and allowed him to leave. Upon completing the mission, the system rated him as A rank. He earned a B rank magic book, a C rank item, as well as experience and 5 attribute points. The mechanical knuckle increases the critical chance by 30%. That's not bad at all for someone like him who uses fists. Now it's time to take the cube to the director. Finally, he is teleported outside. In the director's office, he calls for him and finds it strange that no one is there. Either way, since he already has the key, he'll try to open the cube himself. The key is placed into the seal binding the cube. Lightning bursts from the object along with a bluish light and it begins to move. From it emerged a blade with unknown attributes, an evolved item. That's what they left for him, but he doesn't know why it's a weapon or why it appears to lack attributes. It's not very suitable since he's a mage. The director finally arrives at the room, and Kyo says he opened the cube. He doesn't care about that. The boy needs to leave now or risk missing exam day. It takes a moment for him to get oriented about the exam. In the exam hall, several students are gathered. Some students are pressuring the examiners to start the test already, but Yang asks them to wait because one student is still missing. The troublemakers say it doesn't matter since it's probably someone weak and without potential like him. Yang didn't like what he heard and asked the guy to repeat it. Then the big shot said it's common for the first place winner to always come from his university, and that this year wouldn't be any different. It doesn't matter if other candidates try the test. Therefore, if the latecomer hasn't arrived yet, it's surely out of fear of participating. Hearing that, Yang says his friend could knock them all out with a single punch. Taking the bait, the guy says the little guy can try his luck, but he'll gobble him up like bread. Hearing all this, the girl wonders where Chow has wandered off to. Mi-Fei also steps forward and says the only one who can rival him is Chow. But even saying this, he's worried about his friend's absence. Not far away, Chow is running to get to the exam hall, knowing he's late. One of the examiners asks if all the students from the 4th university are present. This was his last chance to arrive and participate. From afar, he shouts that he's here, to the relief from his colleagues. The man has arrived just in time. The envious ones are annoyed that an anonymous student made them wait so long. One of them tries to downplay the situation, saying he wasn't really late, and the envious ones say they're in a hurry to secure the best placements. Chow asks where these guys crawled out from, and Yang says they're from the 1st university. The envious one gets furious at the way he was referred to, and says he'll crush Chow in the competition. Chow continues to dismiss them, and hadn't expected the supposedly top students to have such fragile egos. Faced with this, the most offended one becomes completely flustered. Behind him, another student calls his attention. Their goal is 1st place, not making trouble. This puts the clown in his place. Just as they started to stir up trouble, they left as abruptly as they came. With everyone present, it's time for the exam to begin. The lead examiner takes his position. He does Jin Tong, and the exam will use a point system. Victories earn 2 points, even consecutive ones. All losses deduct 1 point, but no more than 1 in a row. After the first phase, the top 10 will face off to determine the best among them. When asked if the students understood, they confirmed they did. With the instructions given, in the audience, several parents are cheering for their children. In the major arena, Chow reflects that the rules resemble dueling ones. The minimum health is 1, and it's impossible to die. This way, he doesn't need to hold back at all. Stillman asks Long Xian who he thinks will win. He was last year's champion. Naturally, he imagines it will be someone from the university. In Chow's first match, he will face Long Meishan from the 1st university. He looks at his opponent with calmness and serenity. The clown is delighted to meet him right at the first opportunity. Chow says that name is funny, and he makes a joke about the way it's pronounced. Hearing this, the clown gets furious and promises to knock his teeth out. The referee asks if both are ready, to which they both confirm. Now it's time for both of them to introduce themselves. They don't see the point of it though, as their ranges start punching each other right away. Long introduces himself as a level 9 mage with electric abilities. Chow, on the other hand, is a level 11 necromancer. Since he's level 11 and in the initial stage, the clown knows he's in trouble. Even the judge is impressed by a candidate who reached this stage before the exams. With the introductions done, they can start fighting. Confident, the clown prepares his electricity magic, believing it will be effective against the undead. Lightning begins to gather around him. Chow observes but isn't impressed in the slightest. A large dome of electricity forms around the clown. Apparently only 1 in 10 people can become electric mages, making it a rare skill. But to the onlookers, it seems like he's taking a defensive position. They can't imagine his opponent being capable of defeating him. Inside his dome, the clown invites the necromancer to attack, wanting to see what he's capable of. However, he's puzzled because he hasn't seen Chow's staff during the battle. An elder asks the director if this is the young man who Jingyu University offers a spot to without hesitation, since he doesn't seem to be here to fight. He seems overly confident, and if he keeps this up, he'll lose quickly. But the director knows this student once hit a professor and sent him flying with a single blow. In the audience, other professors are eager to see how this battle between undead and electricity unfolds. So far, neither of them has done anything offensive. Despite this, the clown remains uneasy. Chow advances toward him slowly, and the mage doesn't understand why he hasn't summoned anything yet. Then Chow steps into the dome of lightning without taking any damage. This startles the clown because it wasn't supposed to be this easy. Necromancers are supposed to be weak, but this guy is taking damage like it's nothing. In the audience, people are questioning if these are really two mages, because if they are, one of them is being reckless. Getting closer, Chow puts on knuckle dusters. It's time to knock out some teeth and take the opportunity to test his new equipment. Realizing he's about to be struck, the mage makes his underwear unbearably heavy. The critical hit drains more health than he had. His body flies across the arena, destroying everything in its path. If it weren't for the dual rules, he'd be nothing but a smear on a shirt. Knowing how much damage he dealt, Chow tells the young man he now owes him just 5 lives. The audience is even more shocked. How could a necromancer, supposedly weak, do like that with brute force? The elder wants to question the director about how or why this happened. After all, that necromancer dealt over 1,000 damage with a single blow. The director, however, says there's nothing unusual about a necromancer being a little strong. Chow has trained since a young age and has many aptitudes. Last year's champion is interested in him and is eager to see how skilled he is with magic. A young man rushes to the superior. He brings the news that Long was knocked out with a single punch by a 4th university student. The superior already knew this. The boy is strong, but now it's time to wait. Still, the first place will belong to their university. The audience remains intrigued by Chow's unreasonable strength. He can't possibly be a mage. After his victory, Chow thanked those who supported and cheered for him. In the arena, a man asks Chow to follow him, but Chow wants to know why he should. It was so impressive that someone accused him of cheating, and they need to run some tests. This outrages Chow, but can't believe he's being scrutinized for performing well. The man then asks how a mage like him could be so strong. Chow replies that he's naturally strong. This explanation isn't very convincing, and they escort him away. As he's taken, the audience begins to suspect he might have cheated. The elder also wonders if Sulugui's student was cheating, but he asks for patience to see what happens. Ida Mufai questions if Chiao is cheating, but his colleague reprimands him. The envious ones say that once Chow is tested, they'll prove he's not what he claims to be. Yang says they'll see when Chow returns. Skeptical, they mock the softie, saying his friend won't come back. A yellow portal stands before him. The man instructs Chow to step inside to take the test. Entering, he says that people only have doubts when faced with true geniuses. Once the test was conducted, no anomalies were detected. The man then instructed him to take the test once more. For the second time, he takes the exam, and for the second time, no anomalies were detected. With that, the man ordered someone to check the equipment to ensure it was functioning correctly. While waiting, the technicians evaluated the integrity of the device. Apparently, it was working perfectly, with no sign of malfunction. So he really is capable of dealing 1,000 damage with a single punch. There's never been a mage who could do that. Now, he had to take a drug test. If he passed it, he could return to the exam. Meanwhile, the second round was underway. One of the competitors believed that Chow wouldn't return, and if time ran out, he would be automatically disqualified. In the arena, the students were preparing for their matches. The mage was waiting for his opponent, who had not yet arrived. Asking the professor, he received confirmation that if the opponent didn't show up, he would automatically win by disqualification. The one who hadn't shown up was the necromancer, and the audience began to suspect he was cheating. Meanwhile, the necromancer was in the bathroom. A man followed him, needing to witness the urine collection. Closing the door, the necromancer remarked that he feared scaring the man. However, the man insisted he was a trained professional. The two were inside the stall. Upon exiting, the man was traumatized by what he had witnessed. Returning to his supervisor, the man reported that Chow's results were all clean. That was enough to allow him to return to the exam. Looking at his file, the supervisor recognized him as the son of Chow Anking. Certainly, he was bound to deliver many surprises. Yang was already worried about the risk of his friend being disqualified. The envious one said that he wouldn't return and had probably already been expelled without anyone knowing. The girl pointed out that he was only investigated because of a report, likely made by them. But she admitted she had no proof it was them, and besides, it wouldn't matter if he were actually cheating. That level of damage was completely disproportionate, and it was natural for anyone to question its validity. Yang continued to believe in his friend's innocence and that he would return soon. The envious ones insisted they were delusional, saying Chow wouldn't return under any circumstances. Mafei remarked that they were desperate to take first place, but it wouldn't work. Even with Chow out of the competition, he was determined to win. Then the girl announced that Chow had arrived. After passing all the tests, he was heading toward the arena. The referee was preparing to declare a win by disqualification, but Chow asked him to wait. Despite the delay, he had arrived. Since both candidates were present, it was time to begin. As before, Chow introduced himself to his opponent. Seeing that Chow had returned, the audience began to believe he hadn't cheated and truly was capable of dealing such immense damage. The envious ones now had to swallow their words in silence, seeing Chow's return. In the arena, Chow's opponent said there was no need for introductions. Since he had arrived, he would make a move, but before the match could start, the opponent forfeited. He didn't want to risk taking a punch capable of dealing 1,000 damage, but Chow chased after him, trying to otherwise. This surprised the referee, and Chow gained a few more points. With the forfeit, he now had a total of 5 points. His friends went to the arena to talk to him. At the headquarters of the envious ones, they lamented that the necromancer had returned and didn't know what to do next. Reporting him had only been a tactic to buy time. If he hadn't cheated, he would inevitably come back. But that wasn't their only scheme to try and get him eliminated. No one was going to take first place from them. With that, Chow's next battle began. Just like his previous opponent, his current one forfeited before the fight could start. This irritated Chow as he was eager to crush some faces. However, his opponent insisted he didn't want to experience the pain of 1,000 damage punch. The same happened in the 4th round, much to Chow's frustration. This continued until the 8th match. Chow, who had been hoping to face someone, was disheartened by the situation. If things kept going this way, he would enter the second phase with a perfect score. But the envious ones planned to pit him against a professor from the 2nd Academy in the 9th round. It remained to be seen whether she would follow their plan. All they need is to start the fight, the rest will depend on her decision to win or not. And so it begins. Professor Suerong will fight against Chow. In the audience, the crowd goes wild over the beauty of the woman. In the arena, it's time for them to introduce themselves. The woman is an ice mage level 11. Among the directors, an old man comments that Chow is in a tough spot now, but Sue reinforces the idea that they don't know how strong Chow really is. Chow introduces himself as a level 11 necromancer. After the introductions, the professor's staff immediately starts glowing. This surprises Chow because up until now, she didn't seem like someone who would give up. Calmly, she says there's no reason for her to back down now. Hearing this, Chow becomes excited since it's the first time someone hasn't given up after knowing how strong he is. In the audience, the crowd gets upset, assuming he'll fight dirty against such a beautiful woman. Hearing the boos, he responds that he won't go all out against someone so beautiful. Then he pulls out the item he got from the magic cube. It's so unusual that the referee can't believe Chow is actually a necromancer. On the other hand, the professor becomes apprehensive as she's never seen a mage fight this way. Wielding the spear, Chow moves to attack. As a defense, the mage conjures an ice wall to protect herself. Ice rises from the ground, attempting to trap Chow. But with this simple movement of the spear, he shatters it completely. Feeling him getting closer, she knows she won't stand a chance if he gets too near. Still, she's confident her abilities will be enough to restrain him, even if only for a few moments. Leaping forward, Chow tries to close the distance for close combat. The professor had been waiting for this moment when he was off the ground. She says he's powerful but too confident, and now this streak of victories would come to an end. Before he could land, he was already surrounded by the ice she summoned. His body is nearly completely encased in ice. With this, he becomes trapped in a massive block of ice, entirely immobilized. In the audience, people praise her strategy and agree she's clearly superior to a student. The directors believe the fight is over, but Sue tells them to keep watching. Speaking with the referee, she asks if she has won the match, but he tells her to look at her opponent. Chow's health is steadily decreasing but hasn't reached 0 yet. So the mage approaches the block of ice. As she gets closer, Chow's face is already visible. She suggests he surrender, saying he's lost. And through the cold, Chow replies he refuses to give up. To her, he's just enduring unnecessary pain, and soon his health will drop to 0. But Chow knows that with his current health, it will take some time. Forcing his way out of the ice, cracks start to form in the block. To prevent this, the mage tries to produce more ice to restrain him. Once again, he's trapped, but the professor recognizes that to have broken the ice, he must be abnormally strong. Her efforts didn't stop him from freeing his head from the ice again, and now he wonders how much mana she has left. Her mana is already depleted, while his health still appears to be full. Unable to maintain the ice trapping him, Chow finally breaks free from his frozen prison. Without mana, she can only watch in disbelief at what just happened before her eyes. Once free and with her mana drained, Chow points his spear at her. He gently invites her to surrender the match, but she refuses to do so. The blunt side of Chow's blade is about to strike her head. The professor is sent flying, taking 260 damage. Her crowd goes wild at the seemingly brutal act. Chao, however, couldn't care less about their reaction. After all, this is a competition. The battle finally ends with Chao emerging as the winner of the round. The directors are utterly incredulous, and Sue declares that this year, Chao will be the champion. No one can stop him. A student rushes to aid her professor, noting that her score is enough to advance to the next stage. The problem, however, is that young man who isn't a mage and insults the competition by being here. This irritates Chao, as it's not his fault he's a mage focused on close combat and much stronger than all of them. At the stronghold of the envious ones that no longer knew what to do, Chao was undefeated and advancing to the second phase of the exam. The envious leader called the professor useless, saying he would have to take matters into his own hands now. A student asked the professor what she thought of the fight and commented that Chao's strength was extraordinarily unusual. She had seen the fight schedule and Chao wasn't supposed to be her opponent. Someone had deliberately altered it. This made her think someone wanted her out of the second phase, but she soon realized the real target was Chao. She wondered whether she should tell him. She decided to approach him and share what she had discovered. She told him what had happened and urged him to be cautious, because this person was likely still after him. Instead of worrying, this motivated him even more to send this person flying with a single blow. With the first phase over, people prepared for the second stage. The candidates who passed the first stage gathered together. The arena battles were finally about to begin. These were the top 10, and the audience was divided between thinking Chao would win or that he was just a cheater. He was the first to step into the arena, but in reality, he was just waiting for the one trying to sabotage him from the shadows. Positioned in the center of the arena, the audience speculated that he intended to take on all 9 opponents at once. Behind him, a tremblone enthusiast made his entrance. The newcomer claimed that only a genius could secure first place, and he was one. Before he could react, he was slapped across the face, losing 354 health points. Chao reaffirmed his statement. That guy wasn't a genius. The audience was increasingly amazed, convinced that this remarkable young man would be the winner. His victories were so overwhelming that the crowd no longer hesitated to cheer for him. His name was being chanted, but all he cared about was the emergence of the one trying to sabotage him. The envious one approached and called him a crowd pleaser, nothing more. Then he made Chao a proposal of 5 million. Chao didn't understand, so the envious one clarified it was an offer of 5 million in exchange for Chao withdrawing. He pointed out Chao was an orphan, his parents hadn't left him any significant inheritance, and that amount could change his life. Feeling insulted, Chao said, dreams couldn't be priced. Or rather, they could, but not for such a paltry sum. Seeing a possibility, the envious one asked how much more Chao wanted. He would consider giving up for 1 billion, but wouldn't refuse 100 billion if offered. That amount was out of the envious one's budget, so he declared he would deal with Chao harshly instead. Chao wanted to understand why he was so hated, deciding this must be the envious one. Like Chao, the guy was at the initial stage and was a shadow mage. It was the first shadow mage Chao had ever encountered. The battle was about to begin. Chao was excited. He'd finally get to mess up the envious one's face. With one hand, the guy summoned his shadow magic. Shadows began forming around the arena. Taking on humanoid shapes, the guy extended his hand toward Chao. The battle between a necromancer and a shadow mage left the audience ecstatic. They wanted Chao to summon his undead, but he said he didn't need them. He was more than enough to handle the situation on his own. Wielding his spear, Chao waited for the shadows to get close enough to him. When the first one entered his range, he struck it hard. But he noticed something. They were different, more solid than he had expected. These shadows had bones of steel and iron, the first stage of what the envious one had prepared to defeat Chao. But Chao wasn't intimidated and kept fighting, hitting the shadows, which could do nothing to defend themselves. If that was all there was, it wouldn't be a problem. Solid or not, it didn't matter. He was motivated to see if his strength could break one of them. With a powerful vertical strike, he aimed to slice one of the shadows. Despite the strength of the blow, his blade couldn't completely cut through it. Since his blade was already near its neck, he struck what appeared to be a weak spot. Now only 3 shadows remained to be dealt with. The envious one struggles to believe the sheer physical strength of Chao. If someone told him Chao was a monster, he would believe it. Meanwhile, another shadow loses its head to Chao's blade. It doesn't take long for all the shadows to cease existing. Now it's the envious one's turn to face the edge of the blade. As Chao approaches for the attack, the envious one states that he doesn't summon those shadows for combat. They are sacrifices, and he begins the process of assimilating them. Before anything else can happen, Chao's blade strikes the envious one's arm. If it weren't for the tournament rules, that shadow mage would already be claiming his parking space in the afterlife. However, Chao notices something strange happening to his arm. The mage acknowledges Chao's strength, admitting he's the first to force him to use shadows as sacrifices. It seems that any direct attack on him will reflect damage onto the attacker. Drawing a dagger, the mage warns that even without being attacked, Chao won't be safe. He then uses the short weapon to injure himself. The damage transfers to Chao, costing him 50 health points. The Envious One promises to fulfill his initial promise if Chao admits defeat. Despite the challenging situation, Chao refuses. Meanwhile, the Envious One notices that a blow to Chao's chest wasn't enough to drain his health entirely. He continues to injure himself, commenting that Chao is stubborn and shouldn't blame him for the pain he's about to feel. The pain Chao experiences from those strikes is very real. Now the mage prepares to target an extremely sensitive part of male anatomy, displaying no ethics whatsoever. This deeply unsettles Chao, forcing him to react quickly with his spear, severing the mage's arm. The Envious One is forced to retreat and uses the shadow sacrifice and assimilation process again. As a result, Chao suffers another 496 damage points. In this situation, having high attack power is no advantage. Qidao needs to figure out the limitations of the mage's ability. Perhaps it's tied to the dark aura surrounding him. He then understands the mage's abilities, and that with the next move, the fight will end. With one hand concealed, the Envious One taunts Qidao, inviting him to try anything he likes. Facing him, Qiao executes a strike that doesn't hit, but causes a displacement in the air nearby. Qidao asks if the mage really thought he wouldn't see through the enchantment. Now it's time to see if the mage can dodge the attack. The Envious One declares that if he does, he'll call Chao Daddy. The punch is already prepared, ready to crush the mage's face. The mage summons a technique. The defense withstands the first impact of Chao's punch. It seems Chao's guess was correct. Otherwise, the mage wouldn't have needed to defend. However, the mage insists that defending isn't the same as dodging. Wasting no time, Chao continues striking, causing the Envious One to lose 125 health points. The shield can withstand hits from an average boss, but it crumbles under Chao's strength. The Envious One can't accept that Chao is stronger than a boss. Calmly advancing, Chao declares it's time to end this, but the mage retorts that he'll be the one to finish the fight. A massive volume of shadows gathers around the mage, larger than ever before. They begin to engulf his body, and the color of his eyes changes. The transformation is astounding, drawing Chao's attention. In this form, even a player with strong physical attributes would be no match for him, and neither would Chao. The Envious One is determined to secure first place in the exam, convinced that Chao's end is near. Without time to react, Chao lunges at him with a kick, delivering a subtle ambush. The Envious One is flying across the arena, kicking up dust and destroying everything in his path. However, his body is much more solid now. Merging with the shadows has made him significantly more resilient. The Envious One didn't appreciate the surprise kick and is now ready to return the favor. As he gets close enough, Chao prepares another one of his punches. Their hands collide in the arena. The force of the impact reverberates through the air, breaking the ground beneath them. This causes Chao to lose footing with one of his legs. Mid-air, he's forced to defend against a kick heading his way. Before he can return to the ground, his ankle is grabbed. Even so, Chao is not surprised at all by his opponent's strength. From the air, he strikes him in the face with ease. Once again, the Envious One is thrown, this time breaking the ground with his body. The audience doesn't understand, as a mage duel has turned into a hand-to-hand fight. Observing the battle are two mysterious figures. They are assassins, now certain that this is not Mufi, but actually the Chao they were searching for, and that they must bring him to Bai Zi. A shadow mage wonders how Chao is capable of matching his strength in this state and what magic he used to achieve it. Matching, this word doesn't define the situation between them. Within himself, the Envious One thinks his ability is nearing its end. Now, he has no other choice. He uses his Devouring Shadows sacrifice technique. His director is concerned and orders him not to use it under any circumstances, but he refuses to give up the fight, wanting to prove he's stronger than his brother. His brother is last year's champion, and this has placed undue pressure on him for a healthy competition. Unconcerned with his personal drama, Chao just wants him to attack already with this new ability. The Envious One strikes, causing Chao to lose 141 health points while declaring that his end is near. But despite the damage, Chao remains fine and capable. He retaliates with his own strike, hitting the transformed mage's face. In the middle of the arena, the two exchange relentless blows. One of the referees expresses concern and asks if the exam overseer will allow this to continue, to which he replies, just a bit longer. A hidden woman speaks into a radio, instructing her team to prepare to capture the two. The enraged mage doesn't understand why Chao is still resisting, and Kuo says the same. The mage is stronger than any boss he's ever faced. The fight continues with fury on the mage's side and a wide smile on the necromancer's face. But one fighter's abilities are nearing their limit, and Qiao lands a precise punch on the envious one. The layer of shadows surrounding him shatters, and the envious one wonders if he has truly been defeated. It seems that Qiao has won, and the referee prepares to announce the result. Then something happens in the arena, alarming the organizers. The chief exam organizer shouts at someone, saying they are courting disaster. Qiao doesn't understand what is happening, but from the gleam in his eyes, it's clear someone is approaching. A truck flees the competition venue. Inside it are several students who participated in the second phase, including Qiao. He finally wakes up wondering what happened. The envious one, whose name is Gu Su, is there, as is the professor who fought him. It seems the best candidates have been kidnapped. A hooded woman approaches him, saying she regrets bringing him in this way. Qiao remarks that if this is her way of inviting people, she should refine her method. She tells him not to fear. She is the leader of Baizi in this city, and her name is Gu Si. It was because of Qiao's abilities that she had to abduct him. Yang and Ma Fei, also present, don't recognize the name Baizi, a bold move by this organization to act in the middle of the exam. The professor states that the repercussions of this action will be enormous and demands they be released immediately. But the woman insists they will be freed as soon as they reach their destination and assures them there is no risk as long as they remain calm. However, anyone who tries to escape will find out firsthand whether God exists. The question among them is why they were all abducted. Just as universities need good prospects, her organization does too. One of the captives stands up, saying he's never heard of them, and demands to be freed immediately. The woman kicks him in the stomach, knocking him to the ground. She says they have no choice. Once they witness the power of the organization, they will join willingly. If they refuse, they won't live. If they are smart enough, they will realize the correct choice. The cops are special, and they shouldn't even think about escaping to the inner world. Leaving the room, the door closes behind her. Earlier, the professors have fought, and the chief organizer asked who these people were. His arrows struck a young man, but that was one of the exam workers. There's an infiltrator among them, but the top priority is to rescue those who were taken. An expert level 35 archer, who would have thought the chief examiner would turn out to be him. The man prepares his bow, not knowing who the young man is, and the latter says he doesn't intend to reveal his identity. Arrows are fired toward the hostile intruder, but it wasn't his body, it was just a mirage. Distracted, the chief examiner is struck. The young man remarks that the old examiner is hot-headed, a surefire way to meet an untimely end. The rubble covering him flies into the air as he stands up. Soon, the same thing happens to the entire ground around them. As the dust begins to settle, something unfolds. The chief examiner finally frees himself from his restraints. Two of his subordinates arrive to check on his health, and he assures them he's fine, but wants to know where the intruders are. They escape with 10 students, and the subordinates fail to stop them. Hearing this, the examiner demands to know which 10 students were captured. After hearing their names, he becomes deeply enraged. Two directors approach him, explaining that since the captives are prodigies, they are not in immediate danger. This was so well orchestrated that it's no ordinary organization behind it, not in the middle of an exam. Another subordinate approaches, reporting that the same thing happened in other cities. The examiner orders an investigation, prioritizing the student's safety. In the truck's container, Qiao examines the special shackles. One student, a physical cultivator, says those shackles shouldn't be able to hold him. He struggles to break free, but the chains remain intact. On the other hand, Qiao easily frees himself, commenting on the poor quality of his shackles, much to the physical cultivator's surprise. With his spear in hand, Qiao offers to help free the others. Using the blade, he quickly breaks their restraints. One student remains shackled, the envious one. Using his abilities, he insists he doesn't need Qiao's help. As he struggles to free himself, Qiao cuts through the truck's wall. Now the students have a clear path to escape. A mysterious woman hears the suspicious noise. She immediately orders the truck to stop. As she steps out, she finds the students already outside. Once again, they face each other. Not even a level 20 physical cultivator could remove those shackles, and she demands to know how they managed it. Qiao quips that if he told her, she wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Before she can say anything more, they are teleported away. Frustrated, she fires her quad-barreled weapon. The blast shatters the ground beneath them. They are in the inner world now, but once they return, help will have arrived. Furious, she vows not to forget Qiao's name. In the secret world, they have an E-rank mission to stop the resurrection of a demon. His companions have disappeared, likely transported to random locations. For now, he considers destroying the NPC's device, thinking it might allow him to move freely. Something triggers his alertness. A young man tells his master that the deity of pleasure has risen from the dead, but the master refuses to believe it, saying such a thing is impossible. When a body turns malevolent, it becomes covered in fur and its teeth and nails elongate. The young man insists he saw this, but the master reiterates that the deity couldn't have done such a thing. Qiao thinks that if he follows these NPCs, he'll quickly reach the core of the world's story. He continues walking, pretending to be a reanimated corpse. Now they're all inside a house. The master announces he needs to leave and instructs his student to watch over the deity of pleasure. The student begins praying for the deity not to rise from the dead. As he prays, the door is kicked open by newcomers. The new arrivals are carrying what looks like a sarcophagus. The old man notices a restraining talisman and demands to know the boy's relationship with the corpsed shepherd, Xiu Xian. The boy replies that Xiu Xian is his master and asks if the old man is a coffin bearer. Laughing, the old man remarks that Xiu Xian's disciple has some discernment. He wants to know where the boy's master is, and the boy explains that he had to leave but will return soon. Examining the body, the old man speculates it must have died recently, as the skin is firm and still warm. The boy warns that he shouldn't offend the deity of pleasure as it could have dire consequences. The other man scoffs, saying it's just a body and there are no consequences for what they said. Only body shepherds think like that, he retorts, adding that if the man tried anything, he'd make his club sing on his head. But the disciple insists that such actions would be an enormous disrespect. Observing the body, the man notes its fine features, estimating it would be worth a lot of money, and orders Feng Lai to grab it. Hearing the command, Feng Lai moves toward the body, to the surprise of the boy standing there. In response, the boy steps in his way, refusing to let the body be stolen. Ignoring the boy's words, Feng Lai slaps him across the face. The boy declares that if Feng Lai continues trying to steal a body, he'll do everything he can to protect it. Seeing the boy's small size, Feng Lai feels no intimidation at all. Knowing the boy would interfere, he knees him in the stomach. The force of the impact throws the boy far away. The man continues walking, commenting that the boy is too small and fragile to do anything. Q, pretending to be a body, doesn't like what he sees. His reaction is noticed by the boy guarding him, as well as the two men who arrive later. Removing the seal from his head, Q sighs. It's regrettable, he thinks, that Feng Lai harmed the boy over something so trivial. Seeing what they thought was a body moving, the boy exclaims that the deity of pleasure has returned from the dead. Q hadn't intended to intervene but needed to reach the coffin mountain and wouldn't let those two sell him. Sensing an attack, the older man uses a poison technique, but it's completely ineffective as Q's fist meets his face. The older man's body flies through the air, crashing into the hard floor of the house. Only now does he realize that this isn't a body but a living person. Feng Lai assumes it's some kind of trick and is undeterred as he attacks. His club lands squarely on Q's face. Despite the impact, the result is almost negligible, leaving Q surprised. Seeing such resilience, the old man can no longer tell if this is a living person or just a body. Looking at Q's status, even he is unsure. He's a reanimated body with 100 extra defense, but doesn't regenerate health or mana. This is why the body reanimating Bell made him act without a will of his own, and with high health he's fine since he doesn't use mana. The old man orders his disciple to hold Kyo off while he prepares a body suppression technique. Once again, the man moves to attack the reanimated body. Q also prepares to strike, unimpressed. His devastating blow sends Feng Lai sinking into the ground, even though he defended. Feng Lai tells his master he can't hold out much longer and hopes he's ready. The cunning old man had already fled the scene. Feng Lai is upset at being abandoned without explanation. Q tells him not to worry as the old man won't escape this situation. Leaving Feng Lai behind, Q chases after the old man. One strike is enough to permanently retire the elder. Not only the other man remains utterly disheartened by the situation, but Q hasn't forgotten the man either. Smashing his face into the ground, Q gains experience and attribute points for defeating both. Now he's curious about the object they were carrying. It looks like a spirit suppression coffin. With one hand, he opens it to see what's inside. Inside is his companion, the paladin. Of all people, he didn't expect to find someone he knew and recognized her by her slim frame. Waking up, she wasn't pleased to be recognized for that particular trait. Apparently, they're now part of the dungeon mission, which is why they became bodies. The boy nearby can't believe there's another reanimated deity. Taking advantage of his presence, Q addresses him. The boy asks what they need from him, and Q says they need to go to Coffin Mountain, coincidentally the same destination the boy and his master are headed to. After some time, the boy's master returns. The boy claims he captured the deity himself, and the master asks how he could have managed such a feat. They still had a long journey ahead of them. Elsewhere, monks walked with coffins, seals floating around them as one chanted a prayer aloud. Q observed his surroundings carefully. The master spoke to one of them and ordered him to enter, saying the others would arrive soon. Handing a bell to his disciple, he instructed him to take care of the deities. Holding the bell, the disciple shook it gently. In the direction they were heading, there were more bodies of others who had been part of the exam. Yang noticed that two of his friends were arriving. Q felt happy to reunite with him in that place. To the boy's astonishment, the bodies began talking to each other. It seemed impossible that all those deities could be alive. Elsewhere, the elders were gathered, and one of them asked if they were all prepared for the deities of pleasure. This was the 5th time they were summoning the spirits, and he hoped they were all adequately prepared. That night, they planned to venture into the emperor's tomb. As the night progressed, a moon rose high in the sky, illuminating the area. The monks' procession continued its journey. They all gathered now in front of the emperor's tomb. The cold night wind blew through them. With all the deities present, one of them asked if they could leave now. The head monk asked the speaker where he intended to go. Confused, the monk asked what he meant by that. The time had come, and the supreme ruler would return. With the bodies there, it was time for the divine emperor to descend. Using human blood as a sacrifice, they welcomed the emperor. Hearing these words, the monks were horrified. They hadn't known they would be used as sacrifices. Trying to head monk was futile. Those who valued their lives were urged to flee while there was still time, but escape was impossible. They weren't going anywhere now. The entire area was surrounded by reanimated bodies. The zombies not only attacked the monks, but also prevented their escape. These were corrupted bodies, and the old monk realized the head monk had planned all this. Seeing the chaos, Ju asked Gao what they should do. They needed to prevent the demon's resurrection. Perhaps this was the figure the monk referred to as the divine emperor. If that were the case, they had to attack, and so they began, taking down the corrupted bodies. The head monk noticed that the bodies had entered the tomb, finally allowing the emperor to return. Examining the ongoing battle more closely, doubts arose about the bodies. They seemed alive. Enraged, the head monk grew increasingly agitated, furious at the interference with his plans. Using his brush, a malicious elder began chanting an incantation. Meanwhile, Qiao was surrounded by corrupted bodies. Feeling his movements slow, he realized his body was succumbing to an incantation affecting reanimated corpses. Armed with his spear, he prepared to strike at the source of the spell. A spear was thrown, piercing through several bodies toward the malicious elder, but the elder continued chanting. As the spell concluded, he commanded 10,000 hidden bodies. Feeling the ground shift beneath them, Qiao's companions were terrified. In truth, something had happened, and none of them could move. They should be frightened, though, as their bodies were the perfect nourishment for the emperor's return. The situation was dire. If it continued, the demon would be revived at any moment. Looking at the monk who had accompanied him from the beginning, Qiao reminded him they were there to stop the demon's resurrection. Hearing this, the monk refused to believe it was a demon being resurrected. The demon of their legends burned everything around him. One of the 4 great ancestors of the corpses, the dry demon. Whether it was human, corpse, or deity, the most important thing now was to stop the resurrection. Using his magic, the monk removed the curse restricting him. For a short time, spells affecting reanimated corpses would have no effect on him. That was enough. As long as he was there, the demon wouldn't leave its tomb. Looking at the other monks, the elder asked what they were waiting for. Pulling themselves together, they began freeing all the reanimated bodies. Desperate, the malicious elder declared that no one could stop the resurrection of his master. Qiao was confident he could, striking the elder with all his strength. The elder's body lay motionless atop the objects that had stopped him. Now, under no circumstances could the sarcophagus come into contact with human blood. It was too late. The evil elder's blood had made contact with him. An evil hand burst from the ground. The dragon's breath was being born once more, and the system alerted them that the demon had been resurrected. Their mission had now changed. Mephis stared at the ethereal figure that appeared before them, amazed. The same astonishment was reflected on the others' faces, except for Qiao. They now mean to defeat this demon as the mission difficulty had risen to level D, an epic level boss at level 20 with 4,000 health and 223 strength. Some of the monks present began to flee, realizing there was nothing they could do against the demon. The demon's eyes locked onto one of the fleeing men. He quickly chased after him, the man's utter despair. Not far from him, the demon noticed a young man nearby. The man approached Qiao, hoping to distract the demon so someone else would be targeted instead of him. Understanding what happened, Qiao grew furious at the cowardly monk. Now the demon stood before him, ready to attack. But before it could do anything to Qiao, he struck it head-on. The demon flew as if it had wings. After slamming into a wall, it briefly recovered. From its mouth, it released a poisonous mist. The mist passed by Qiao, nearly hitting him directly. Ju warned him that it was highly toxic and urged him to be careful. The ice mage acted quickly, casting her magic. Her ice enveloped both the mist and the demon. Meanwhile, the healer restored the health Qiao had lost. With minimal effort, the demon shattered the ice, imprisoning it. One of the students considered using shadow magic. Appearing suddenly beside the demon, he slashed it with his blade. Judging by the monster's expression, the attack was ineffective, but it was enough to enrage the demon. Using this ability, the demon halved all the player's attributes. Now Qiao's health was reduced by half. Unsure of what to do, they realized they had to cooperate to defeat the demon with their reduced attributes. A massive wave of debris flew in front of them. It was Qiao, striking the demon with his fists. This shocked the boy as the necromancer's attack dealt 10 times the damage of his strongest blow. After being hit, the demon retaliated, striking Qiao. The force of the blow sent him flying. Yang rushed to his aid, asking what they should do next, since none of them could break through the boss's defense. Near Qiao was the envious one, so Qiao approached the man. Cunningly, he kicked him toward toward the demon, forcing him to act. The shadow mage was nearly upon the demon. Realizing he needed to respond, the mage summoned his shadows. Before being struck, he conjured a barrier to protect himself. Watching this, Chow hadn't expected such an ability to be so useful in this situation. The monster fought against the shadow mage. Finally, the student used his shadow sacrifice ability. This allowed him to take the demon's blow directly. The impact was so strong that the ground beneath his feet gave way. On the front lines, the shadow mage continued enduring the demon's retaliation. Meanwhile, the other two mages prepared their spells. The professor announced she was almost ready. Once her spell was charged, she unleashed a powerful ice magic. Simultaneously, Yang cast his restriction magic. The resurrected demon was struck by both spells. Xiao was impressed by Gusu's resilience as he continued enduring the demon's blows. Yang declared he was out of mana now. Everything depended on Xiao. Xiao advanced swiftly toward the boss. His hand was about to strike the hideous figure's face. The blow was devastating. The demon's face was utterly disfigured. As if one hit weren't enough, Xiao continued to pummel him relentlessly. The barrage of punches was so intense that the demon resembled a defenseless child. After taking such a beating, the demon finally decided to fight back. Now it screamed in outrage, declaring that not even its father had beaten it like this. It was time to return the blows in the cruelest way possible. Unlike the demon, Xiao didn't stand still waiting to be hit. He quickly counterattacked. Once again, the demon's body flew into the nearest wall. Slowly, it got up to, but it was futile. Xiao was already upon it, ready to end its life. But the monk says Xiao cannot do it. He must be the one to handle it. However, words are incapable of stopping a body descending from the air, and the demon's face slammed into the ground once again. The mission was completed, and Xiao's performance was rated as A. In addition to the attributes and experience gained, he leveled up once more. Finally, the monk reveals that anyone who kills the demon will be cursed. As they converse, the demon's body begins to slowly disappear. A reddish mist forms from what was once the body, and the monk warns Xiao to be careful with it. The mist coalesces before him. The system nullifies Xiao that he is now cursed and will die in 30 days. He asks the monk if there's a way to reverse it, but the monk says there's nothing about this in historical records. His friends ask if he's alright, and he says yes, but he's considering whether someone at the university might know how to deal with it. Yang tells him that the soul core has formed. The envious one thanks Xiao for his effort while taking the item for himself. Since he was once tricked, it's time to return the favor. The item is A level, capable of stealing half the target's agility for 10 seconds. Yang is upset with him knowing he barely did anything yet kept the item. While sounding Yang is stopped complaining, the envious one exits the secret world, but he doesn't succeed. Yang is restraining him with his magic. As Yang holds him back, he urges Xiao to act quickly. The envious one insists he doesn't want to fight them, but Yang's magic won't hold him for long. Xiao is already moving toward the troublemaker. If that's how it is, they'll fight once more, and he'll deboot his new item on him. The envious one steals half of Xiao's agility, gaining an underwhelming 4.5 points. That miserable amount surprises even the envious one. Without the curse of the corpses, a single blow is enough to take him down. While flying through the air, he can only think about how much health Xiao must have to keep fighting. However, he manages to recover and land on his feet. This isn't the exam without agility. They won't catch him. He bids them farewell once again. But once more, he's prevented from teleporting, this time by the ice magic of the professor. She hasn't forgotten what he did to her during the exam. With his brooded charisma, Gusu has made enemies of all of them. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, he uses the shadow sacrifice, but being struck by Xiao causes him to lose a significant portion of his health. He's thrown far away while the ring falls into Xiao's possession. Nearly out of strength, he finally leaves, promising revenge. The item appears to be interesting and will surely be useful in the future. Xiao thanks the professor, who warns him that the envious one is vindictive and he should be careful with him. With that, they all teleport out of the dungeon. Xiao is now level 12, incredibly strong, and with lots of health. Back in the real world, a rescue team is waiting for them. Not far away, the chief examiner is relieved that they've all returned. The directors gather with the rescued students. The examiner promises them an explanation for what happened. None of those responsible will escape justice as the incident was extremely serious. For safety reasons, the exam is suspended and the students will be escorted back to their universities. Before parting, the professor reminds Xiao once more about the envious one, but Xiao assures her he's immune to troublemakers. In a castle shrouded in night, a woman kneels before what appears to be her master. She reports that they escaped from the secret world. The master has encountered Xiao before and found nothing remarkable about him, but now he realizes Xiao is indeed the son of Xiao Anqing. He's growing more interested in this young man. At Xiao University, life goes on as usual. The bus carrying the students has just arrived. Xiao and his friends step off the bus after their journey. They are greeted by Professor Peng, who is pleased they've managed to escape. Speaking with Peng, Chow requests a meeting with Director Ji as he has something important to discuss. In the director's office, Ji waits to hear what the young man has to say. In the last dungeon, Chow was cursed by the boss and a mark appeared on his arm. The director quickly realizes the nature of the curse. It's a death curse, and Chow has only 30 days to live. Peng is alarmed by this diagnosis and wonders if it's truly what will happen. The safest thing they could do was to the Sage's Protection, an S-level item, but it wasn't available on the market. The Sage's Protection was something he once had but had to use. If someone else possessed it now, it would hardly be up for sale. The director contacted some connections, but none of them had the item, so Chow wanted to know if there was another alternative. There was, but with his current strength, it was impossible, and it would be better for him to make the most of his remaining days. Still, Chow wanted to try doing something to save his own life. Categorically, the director warned him that if he attempted this other route, it would lead to his death, but Chow insisted, saying he had no other choice. The director revealed it was in a D-level dungeon. Chow had faced E-difficulty monsters in E-level dungeons before, but a D-level dungeon was entirely different. There was no comparison between them, and anyone entering D-level dungeons was already at the intermediate stage. Even though his equipment wasn't low-level, Chow began hiding his items. The director clarified that he had no interest in a student's loot. However, Chow wanted to know what dungeon it was because he intended to go there. Hearing these words, the director grew irritated. Releasing his energy in the room, Chow took 500 damage without the professor moving a muscle. His eyes burned as if they were being cut. Even so, to the director's surprise, the boy was still standing. Unlike the other professor in the room, this prompted him to ask once more for the dungeon's name. Before answering, the director healed the student's health. "It's the Lake of Purification," he said. Entering this lake could cleanse all negative statuses a player had. Chow thanked him for the information, and the director urged him to be cautious since no beginner stage players were found there. Chow promised to be careful and said he understood everything. After the conversation, he announced he was heading to the dungeon, but the director asked him to wait a bit longer. He handed him an item to wear, explaining it would help him in that place. Looking at it, Chow was impressed. The item increased strength by 30% and granted resistance to mind control. It was an incredibly valuable item, and the director emphasized that it was on loan and must be returned. Thanking him for the assistance, Chow set off toward the Purification dungeon. Finally, he stood before the portal leading to it. To enter the dungeon, he would be placed on a team with other players. Inside the dungeon, the group was welcomed by the system. They were instructed to follow the rules. If they heard something calling them from behind, they must not turn around. Caution was required of anyone who disappeared for more than a minute, and they had to memorize the habits of others. If they heard something whisper in their ear, they were to curse at it until the voice stopped. If a stranger appeared and asked questions, they must not respond. According to some players, the place was safe and accidents were rare. However, one of them argued that it wasn't safe at all and that people frequently died there. Following protocol, a young woman introduced herself as Qin Kum Shui, a level 22 water mage. Next was Chao Xiao, also level 22, a blade master. The other three members were another mage, a blade master, and a sword master, the last of whom was the only level 25 player. Finally, Chao introduced himself as a level 13 necromancer. The man with glasses couldn't believe a rookie was with them and claimed he would slow them down. Another member added that Chao would only hold the group back, but the sword master said he might be useful if he could summon enough undead, while the man with glasses joked that she must be interested in him. She brought her sword close to his mouth and threatened to cut his tongue out if he continued talking nonsense. Apologizing quickly, the man backed off. Mocking the situation, Chao remarked that being handsome wasn't a crime. The women invited him to join them, and he obliged. The man with glasses harbored resentment and planned to take revenge on the woman later. The lake's location was at the forest, and they aimed to reach it without breaking its rules. Calling him little brother, the mage asked Chao why he was there. He took a moment before responding. Before him appeared a figure identical to himself. The Blade Master demanded to know why there were now 7 people in the group. Now there were 2 necromancers in the team. None of them could determine which one was real. Caught in this dilemma, the man with glasses suggested they eliminate both. The mage proposed that the one capable of using necromancy was the real one. The copy began summoning undead. This is problematic because no one would believe a necromancer unable to use magic. Either way, Chao didn't appreciate being copied, and he's ready to eliminate his copy. It is easily sliced apart, surprised by the young man's strength. Losing its form, the monster is revealed to be a mass of tree trunks. Now it's determined to take down the real necromancer. But its attack is ineffective, and Chao cuts it down with his spear effortlessly. It's a common spirit, and defeating it might yield something special. The blade of his spear absorbs something. He informs his group that something has happened to the blade. Now curious, they ask how he wields his spear as a necromancer, and how he defeated a level 22 monster so easily. He explains that he's had an extraordinary body since childhood. As he continues his story, bluish flames appear near them. A spirit has emerged from the ground. Qibao warns everyone to stay alert, but the spirit enters the body of the sword master. Instantly, she falls under its influence. She delivers a strike to the necromancer, inflicting 1,000 points of damage. Observing the damage dealt by an intermediate stage player, Chao is thankful for his high health. Otherwise, he'd be finished. The swordmaster continues trying to attack her companions. The others argue they need to take her down or they'll be next. But the mage casts a water spell. It envelops the swordmaster, trapping her. The other two plan to finish her off quickly, but with little effort, she breaks free from the watery prison. She's ready to continue her assault. This catches the other two players off guard. Chao is already behind her, prepared to act. He strikes her in the face with one of his blows. With the force of the impact, she falls unconscious to the ground, and the spirit leaves her body. The bespectacled guy is utterly shocked by the boy's strength. Hovering above the body, the spirit is now visible. The mage orders everyone to attack it immediately. Wielding his spear, Chao wastes no time. He drives the tip of the spear into the spirit. There's no longer any trace of the spirit, and even the strongest among them couldn't resist. Finally, the swordmaster regains consciousness, hated by the mage. With things calmer, the mage restores the health she had lost. Once the spirit entered her body, she lost control of her actions. It was time to move forward, and Chao advised everyone to be more cautious. The swordmaster thanks him, admitting that without him, the others might have killed her. Chao replies that the dungeon is about helping one another. Noting how painful his punch was, she asks how a necromancer is so strong. Once again, he says he's always been strong. The group continues advancing through the forest, but the two men lag behind, frustrating the bespectacled one. Hearing something suspicious, they turn around. There's a massive monster behind them, asking if it looks more like a human or a god. It's a rare level 29 monster. Repeating the question, the bespectacled one answers that it doesn't look like either. Before he can continue, the monster attacks them. Though caught off guard, they manage to defend partially. The bespectacled one wonders why the monster is so aggressive, but the other guy tells him to stop asking questions. It's the forest's rule. Frustrated, the bespectacled one goes on the offensive, but the monster's agility surpasses his, and it lands a blow first. From the flank, the other guy attempts an attack, but as his sword strikes the monster's head, it shatters into pieces. He struggles to believe what he's just witnessed. The monster opens its mouth and begins to suck something in. A yellow mist creeps toward him. Besides having an exceptionally foul stench, it's poisonous. The monster grins maliciously at both of them. A flurry of strikes is unleashed. Further ahead, Kyo asks if the others heard that noise. The mage says it sounded like someone was fighting. The two men are no longer with the group and have likely encountered something. They search for them and soon find their bodies on the ground. The bespectacled one is writhing in pain, begging for help. Not far away stands the monster responsible. Looking at the group, it asks if it looks more like a human or a god. Kyo replies that it looks more like a fluffy costume. The description stirs the monster's imagination. It doesn't like the comparison at all, and decides to attack Kyo first. The mage grew concerned, as the monster easily defeated the other two players. The other woman, a wood mage, acted to protect Kyo. The vine she summoned restricted the monster's movement, but they weren't very effective. That monster was stronger than her magic. As a result, Kyo took the full force of the blow, losing nearly 400 health points. If this didn't faze him, it only left a small cut on his face. The monster couldn't comprehend how this was possible. Arming himself with brass knuckles, Fudao asked if the monster hadn't been eating its vegetables, commenting that it seemed a bit weak. When it was his turn to strike, he dealt 1,000 damage in a single hit. His companions were left speechless by the absurd strength of the young man. The previously defeated man, now somewhat recovered, also couldn't believe he was so powerful. The impact of his strike sent a wave of debris flying from the forest floor. To Kyo, this forest seemed full of amusing things. The monster was finished, while his companions were terrified of the monster traveling with them. They suspected he must be possessed by something. That made them apprehensive, as Kyo did not hesitate to use necromancy to kill. The women exchanged glances, somewhat pensive about what had occurred. Kyo returned to them, asking if everything was fine, but some people were clearly disturbed by what they had witnessed. The man with glasses told him not to come closer, which Kyo could not understand. Pointing his sword at him, he asked if he was a monster, as there was no way someone at his level could defeat a level 20 creature with bare hands. However, if he were a monster, he wouldn't have bothered to save them. Even so, the man with glasses believed it was all an act. The forest was too confusing, and if Kyo could not prove he was human, he should leave the group immediately. The women defended him, saying he was being helpful and assisting them. But the other man was also intrigued by such an extraordinary ability. Summoning an item, Kyo prepared his explanation. Because a monster should not possess items like those. Frozen said it was true. Items were restricted to players, so he could not be a monster. Even though they were still suspicious, the men could no longer question the situation until one of them noticed it was an A-rank item. This awakened the hidden malice in their hearts. They apologized, and now that they had confirmed the nature of his identity, they decided to continue their path through the forest. But Kyo was no fool, and realized a conspiracy was underway. The group moved through the forest, now under the rain. They did not understand how a novice necromancer could possess 2 A-rank items, but they were not interested in knowing. They wanted to steal them. This situation was definitely favorable for them, an unlikely stroke of luck. Assuming they were stronger than him, they planned to divide the loot evenly. The most sensible among them acknowledged that Kyo had easily killed a powerful monster, but the man with glasses argued it was only because they had been poisoned. Now they waited for the right moment to strike, with the man with glasses set to give the signal. But ahead, Frozen noticed something, causing the group to become alert. She pointed forward, trembling with fear. There was an expanse of creatures ahead, as if they were zombies. Many shadows appeared, resembling spirits. One of them speculated they were the souls of those who had died there, and could not imagine this dungeon would be so terrifying. The coated woman urged them to come to her quickly. It appeared to be an altar with some inscriptions written on it. Deciphering the message, the black-haired woman stated that only through the sacrifice of a living being could they complete the dungeon's task. Furthermore, she explained what those wanderers in the lake were. They were slaves, the fate of those sacrificed, condemned to remain in prison there forever. The idea of making a sacrifice was not well received by everyone. For those intending to rob the necromancer, this was the perfect opportunity. They immediately advanced toward him with the intention of killing him. Frozen was shocked, not understanding what they were doing. It pushed Chow, claiming they were merely completing the dungeon's task. That deeply infuriated him, as he had even saved them before. The man with glasses stated there was no loyalty in a dungeon. Once they left, they would be strangers again, and it was Chow's fault for being too weak. Now, Chow stood at the center of the altar. The man with glasses ordered his accomplice to activate the altar, but he had no idea how to do it. Asking the long-haired woman, she replied that she was under no obligation to tell him anything. Enraged, she said he would deal with her later. Since it was a sacrifice, they decided to kill Chow right there to avoid any mistakes. The director had warned him, but Chow did not expect to encounter such despicable people so soon. To them, Chow was just a necromancer incapable of summoning the dead, a failure who posed no threat to them. The women did not know what to do, and the long-haired woman declared that Chow had helped her so she would repay the favor. The two fools charged fiercely at someone they believed to be weaker than them. Chow emanated his powerful aura, ready to erase the extras from existence. It was only a matter of time before they realized they were merely extras, as their attacks on Chow were utterly ineffective. A powerful blow was effortlessly parried by his spear. Even so, they tried to intimidate Chow, demanding he hand over his items, promising his life might be spared. Now he was almost amused to discover they were actually after his extremely valuable items. Then he repelled the fool far away. But the spectacle clown knows the situation is no longer so favorable, because the long-haired girl came to help her savior. Even though she knows she was saved by Chow, she doesn't understand why she's interfering. It doesn't seem obvious to him. She had to tell the ignoble man that she's only alive because of the boy, and the least she can do now is help. Still, he insists they need to make a sacrifice, and the rookie is the ideal choice. The coated girl remains silent, watching the conflict. The girl refuses to sacrifice her companion for this because the task demands a life sacrifice, not to have a companion. On the other side, Tao keeps pressuring the other fool. Realizing this, the bespectacled one knows the situation has considerably worsened. Even his accomplice doesn't understand what's wrong with Chow, who is abnormally strong. Confident, Chow reminded them that there's still a sacrifice to be made. Together, they believe they might be able to subdue a mage of the initial stage. That enraged the long-haired girl. Outraged, they now decided they would also take her down. The punted girl seemed to activate a device that caused a barrier to rise from the altar. None of them can say what's happening. A message indicates the altar has been activated, and they begin to feel an intense discomfort. With his pendant that grants immunity, Cao is unaffected, but assumes it's a mental attack. Looking outside, the bespectacled man cursed the hooded girl. He wanted to know what she had done. She said it was nothing major, but that she wanted to complete the dungeon task quickly. Knowing this, he cursed her even more. On the altar, plants began to grow and tangle in the players. She said that if they could attack Cao, then she could attack them too. Intrigued, Cao wanted to know how this girl knew the procedure to activate the altar. He recalled the rule to never lose sight of a companion for more than a minute, as one should always be cautious of them. If she knows this much, it's possible she's been to that dungeon before. Turning her back on them, she wished they'd die right there. But Cao has no plans of perishing there. With powerful blows, he destroyed the plants trying to hold him to the altar. Once free, he leaped off the altar toward the girl. To her, that was impossible, and she doesn't understand why he isn't affected by the altar. With his new friend saved, he wants to know the same, how the girl knew so much about that place. He assumes that the moment they entered the dungeon, she already intended to use them as sacrifices. Revealing a malicious smile, she asks if he still has any doubts, and she used a technique against him that made the plants as dangerous as whips. Determined to survive, he used his spear to avoid being struck. However, to his surprise, he wasn't able to cut through them. She also believes that a mage in the initial stage is no match for her, who is in the intermediate stage, launching an attack against him that he couldn't defend. Hitting his neck, Cao wants to know what just happened. It's a small parasite. She advised him to stop resisting and just become her sacrifice. Seeing that she had gotten closer, he seized the perfect chance and used the ring's ability. The girl's agility was halved, but it will only last 10 seconds. Cao needs to seize the opportunity. Using the pendant's ability, his strength increased by 30%. Even with reduced agility, she still acts like she's invincible because he's only in the initial stage. However, reality soon hit her. The one coming to attack her might give her a one-way ticket to the metaphysical world. Sweating and apprehensive, she still believes he's incapable of doing anything against her. As a defensive measure, she tried to make the vines protect her. However, the plants were about as useful as a fireplace in the desert. Now her pretty face is being crushed by a fist, which sent her flying like a soccer ball. Now she's wondering how someone who should be weak can hurt her so much with a single blow. But there's not much time to think as the fight is still ongoing. And once again, her pretty face is being pummeled by Cao's fists. A barrage of blows that, if not for being in a dungeon, would have landed Cao in jail. The cunning girl even tried to appeal to the fact that she's a woman, but Cao reminded her that she tried to kill him, and he's just returning the favor in kind. Even though he was right, his new companions were a bit frightened. The beating session lasted longer than planned, and the ring's effect wore off. The hunted woman gained distance to avoid continuing to take a beating. Even without the ring's blessing, from the beating she took, she might be unable to keep fighting. Wounded and with her pride shattered, she said she wouldn't forget Cao. She teleported away, saying this wasn't over yet. However, if it weren't for the pendant given by the director, things could have been much more complicated. Turning to his companions, he told them they were safe now, though they were still a little shocked. They wanted him to stay away, and Cao said it wasn't his style to hit women. That was an exception. Returning to the altar, they noticed that the two who had been there must have become sacrifices. Cao summoned his spear, and one of the girls wanted to know what he was going to do. He said that altars shouldn't exist. For a moment, they were intrigued by what he was doing, but he was absorbing the altar's life energy, gaining attribute points and experience. With the destruction of the altar, he leveled up and gained more attribute points. It was a significant reward, which explained why that woman wanted so badly to sacrifice the others. Even so, he couldn't quite figure out what kind of energy had been transferred to his spear. The girls approached him after he destroyed the altar. They thanked him for saving them, as they could have become sacrifices too, and decided to abandon the dungeon mission. He said it was fine, and he would have saved them regardless, while thinking that now he needed to go to the purification lake. That was the lake, and the souls that had been there must have been free with the altar's destruction. The young man began removing his shirt. Frozen became shy, and the black-haired girl wanted to know what kind of indecency he was up to. He explained that he was cursed and had come there to remove the curse, and she could confirm it by looking at the mark on his body. Now she understood, but had thought he was about to go into a libidinous rage. With fewer clothes on, he dove into the lake. Frozen decided to join him and invited her companion, reasoning they might also be cursed, given how strange that place was. Indeed, the curse began to fade as he relaxed in the lake. However, the seed lodged in his neck remained, so he decided he would deal with it later. In the lake, his companions were undressed and bathing. That dungeon was far too strange. Without Cao, none of them would still be alive. Because there was a bit of mist in the area, they didn't notice they were approaching Cao. This led to a moment of embarrassment, but the young man said it was their fault. After the group bath, everyone was dressed again. Despite everything, they decided to exchange contacts as they had all been quite amicable. The girls left, and the system notified him that the mission was incomplete, asking if he wanted to abandon his progress. Cao decided to leave too, as the place was too strange, intending to return in the future. With his task completed, he went straight to the director's office. The director was happy to see the boy had returned alive. This impressed him, as a ranked dungeon is quite challenging for someone at the novice stage. What mattered most was that he had returned safely. Now the director wanted to know where the items he had lent him were. The boy said it was thanks to the pendant that he managed to make it out alive. The director tried to take it back, but Cao didn't want to let go of the pendant, so he slapped the boy to make him drop the item, but left him with a challenge. If Cao could beat him in a fight, the pendant would be his. Cao wanted to know what was special about the pendant. It had an enchantment. On a rank and higher item, such enchantments were possible. Despite that, Cao thought the enchantment on his spear seemed different. He asked about the curse, and Cao said he managed to remove it. The director was pleased with the news, and knowing this, told the boy to leave and stop bothering him. Outside, Cao ran into someone. Apparently, this person knew him and called him by name. It was Long Sheng, who had also been at the CO City exam, as he was from there too. Cao remembered that the previous year, this person had been the #1 in the city and had appeared on TV several times. Since they were from the same city, Long Sheng offered to help him if needed, and they exchanged contacts. Cao liked the young man's friendliness, thinking he was a nice person. He just doesn't suspect that in reality, he's a first-grade envious person. The The curse had been removed, and for now, he's going to ignore that he needs to focus on getting stronger as quickly as possible. At dawn the next day, a man demands that Cao explain himself. He wants to know why a mage is participating in physical training. This man is the supervising instructor, Zhang. Cao believes that a mage needs to be able to defend himself, so he needs a strong and resilient body. Zhang says it's necessary to specialize. Even if he has superhuman strength, he's still a mage. But Cao insists on training, because no one knows he's a necromancer who can't summon. With nothing else to do about it, Zhang, though annoyed, agrees with Cao's decision and hands him his identification. The young man wants to know what the card is for. Everything at the academy is done through credits, food, equipment, and so on. The wealthy student thought he could buy credits, but the instructor said they are earned by completing tasks for the school and instructors. Realizing his wealth is useless here, he tasted what it feels like to be poor, and he hated it. Another instructor is gathering the group for physical training and Cao approaches him. There's a professor observing everything curious. This is Jian Shu, a professor at the academy and necromancer. His gaze is so menacing that Cao felt chills. The instructor introduces himself. He is Wan Lei Hao, level 35, final level, and a physical trainer. Cutting the introduction short, he says he doesn't accept garbage in his group and announces he will release his aura. If they withstand it for 5 minutes, they can remain in his group. One of the students wants to know what happens if they go withstand it. He said he would personally go to the principal and assist in transferring the student. After that, he began releasing his aura. The students immediately felt the overwhelming wave. It was too intense, and some already doubted whether they could endure the 5 minutes. One of them encouraged his friends, saying that if they worked together, they would have a chance. The instructor appreciated the young man's emotional control and hoped he would continue like that. That student is Lai Lang, and he called his nearby peers so they could formulate a strategy. No one wanted to be eliminated, and he suggested they pair up and force the instructor to move, dissipating the pressure. Since there were no objections, he proposed forming pairs quickly so they could pass together. The students began looking at each other. Gradually, pairs were being formed, but Kyo, who seemed foolish, was left alone. Lang had to go to him and suggest they pair up, which he agreed to. However, Lang wanted to know what level Kyo was at and why he was so thin despite being in physical training. That's when Kyo revealed that he is, in fact, a necromancer, an unexpected answer that Lang wasn't anticipating. When Kyo mentioned he was at level 14, Lang's reaction was even more surprising. It made no sense for him, a mage, to be in that group. Lang thought he was in a complicated situation, but Kuo stated that he was stronger than most of them there. The others commented that besides being a necromancer, he was musculous, which would make Lang's life harder. Kyo was upset because he told the truth, and yet they didn't believe him. Lang said he would help him by buying time for the necromancer to summon his undead. The preparation time was over, and the instructor wanted to know if they were ready. The group replied they were ready. Then it was time for the underpaid instructor's fun to begin. His massive aura grew in a terrifying manner. Kyo noticed it was heading straight for him. He didn't expect to be the instructor's first target. Lang was worried and stepped in front of him to help, but the instructor's aura was stronger than Lang could withstand. The other students were terrified because Lang wasn't weak, so now Kyo didn't stand a chance. To the instructor, freshmen need to be softened up with hard blows so they don't get cocky later. Kyo prepared himself to resist the aura. Trying to withstand it, he lost 800 life points. It wasn't even a real strike, yet dealt massive damage. But to the instructor, what he had just witnessed was intriguing. The boy, a necromancer, resisted the wind from his strike. However, he couldn't let the student he presumed to be the weakest in the group remain standing. And this time, he directed more of his aura at him with a little more force. Kyo realizes he remains the professor's target. He creates a barrier with his aura to avoid being pushed back or, worse, knocked out. The classmates don't understand how the necromancer is resisting 2 attacks, considering Lang couldn't withstand even a single one. That scene of the mage resisting an attack is simply unbelievable. Kyo continues exerting himself to resist, until finally, the pressure dissipates and ceases. But he realized he was being intense, and perhaps the professor was using him as an example. He decided to provoke the professor and asked if he had been fasting until now. Lang was worried because if the professor got irritated, Kyo could actually get hurt. The professor acknowledges that the boy has guts, but is intrigued by how a necromancer resisted 2 of his blows. Saying he has courage, he remarked that if Kyo withstood the next blow, he would take care of him at Kyoto University. This time, the professor stands before Kyo, ready to strike him, delivering a genuine, devastating blow against him. Kyo is not intimidated in the slightest. On the contrary, he seems to enjoy the challenge. The auras clash intensely, destroying the ground around them. The pressure is so great that even Kyo's clothes cannot withstand the aura, and no matter how much effort he put in, he was thrown far away by the professor's aura. The boy spits blood from the force of the impact. For the other students, this initial test is proving far too brutal. The professor asks Lang to pick 2 more students and take Kyo to the infirmary, thinking he let himself go and ended up fighting a student. However, the surprises don't stop there. Kyo began to rise despite being injured. Completely weakened, he stands up. With only 200 life points, he says he managed to endure the professor's punch. Now his classmates are doubting if he is truly a necromancer, as he claims. Kyo asked if the professor had heard what he said, but before he could continue provoking him, he realized his situation was not that simple. He didn't have enough strength to stay standing, and fell to the ground once more. As he loses consciousness, Shen began scolding Li Hao, saying he shouldn't fight a student. After some time, Kyo starts to regain consciousness. He gets up from the cot and notices the professor is there, who is happy to see him awake. He said Kyo shouldn't get so agitated because he promised him that if he resisted his blow, he would take care of him at the university. Shen said the boy doesn't need his protection and told him to go find something else to do. The two argue as one claims he is his student for passing the test, while the other insists that despite this, he is still a necromancer. But with a body as resilient as that, it doesn't matter if he is a necromancer, he should remain in his class. Shen wants to know why a necromancer like him joined the physical training group, and Kyo says he thinks it suits him better. Irritated, Shen said he was wrong. Very wrong. Behind him, an enormous portal appeared, and from it, the paw of a massive creature emerged. Kyo watched in awe as now what dragon was in the infirmary. Shen asked if it wasn't much cooler to have his own army, rather than rely on brute force to win. The other professor was not impressed by this. Shen said that if Kyo were his student, he would teach him everything, and one day he might even summon a dragon with a simple hand movement. But they don't know that his spiritual power is 0, which prevents him from summoning even a skeleton. After all that explanation, he declined Professor Shen's invitation. Though disappointed, Shen decided to understand the student. Before leaving, he left his card with Kyo, saying it would make it easier to find him if he ever wanted to. Leaving through the portal he had opened there, Kyo was impressed by necromancy and gets a pity he can't use it. The professor said that now that he is almost healed, he should attend class tomorrow because he will take the group to an interesting place. Thus, the class begins. They are in a level C dungeon. In front of the professor, the students begin to appear. Their task is to meditate in the Black Forest until dawn. One of the students didn't understand the purpose of this and asked if it was really that difficult to do. To show them, the instructor threw a stone toward the forest. Midway through its path, the stone was sliced into several pieces. The students don't know how they'll manage to stay there, and some already believe they might die. The instructor assured them that as long as he's there, none of them will die, but suffering is inevitable. In response to the students, he said that enduring this is fundamental to training their willpower. And the second important lesson, they'll learn once they enter the forest. One of the students volunteered to go first. As soon as he stepped into the forest, he felt the wind trying to cut through his body. He resisted, unsure of what was happening. The instructor acknowledged the student's courage and determination, calling him promising, but he wanted to see how long he could endure. Seeing that the student was already experiencing the forest's benefits, the instructor encouraged the others to enter as well, asking if anyone had a defense stat below 100. Kiao wanted to know what would happen if someone's defense was below 100 points. The instructor replied that in such a case, the student would likely die, but to the instructor, Kiao shouldn't have any difficulty, unaware that Kiao only had 6 defense points. Noticing the boy's state, the instructor asked if he had strength without defense and how he withstood his attacks. Kiao explained that his health points were exceptionally high. He said they were 4,000, and it took the instructor a moment to process what he had just heard. When he learned Kiao had 4,000 health points at the initial stage, he was stunned. Now the instructor questioned whether Kiao was truly a necromancer or some kind of humanoid boss. Entering the forest, Kiao began to lose health points little by little. That place gradually increased defense stats over time. Looking around, he noticed everyone was focused on increasing their own defense. He didn't want to fall behind. Sitting on the ground, he began meditating as well. Watching him closely, the instructor was concerned for Kiao, unsure if he could withstand it with such low defense. The students continued their meditation, and creatures in the forest began to stir. A giant spider prepared to attack Kiao, but the instructor wouldn't allow the creature to disrupt the prodigy. The other students quickly noticed the spider's approach and were alarmed. It was a level 33 monster with formidable attributes. Now, Kiao was scared. As strong as he was, it was still just a regular monster. It didn't take long for the instructor to repel the creature. He prepared a powerful strike to deal with the problem, landing a direct hit on the spider. The creature instantly disintegrated into a wave of green slime. Witnessing the instructor's strength, Kiao was sure he had gone easy during the test. With the monster eradicated, the instructor ordered the students to return to meditating. He told them not to even think about leaving until they had reached their limits. This was an excellent opportunity because, with the instructor present, they could train in a level C dungeon. After 2 hours, the first completely exhausted students began to stand up. Kiao was taking damage because his defense was so low, and if this continued, he wouldn't be able to stay much longer. Then, the seed on his neck began to react. But what absorption process was initiated? It started regenerating his health points at the same rate he was losing them. At first, Cho didn't understand why the seed was regenerating him. Even so, he was pleased, as without the seed, he wouldn't have been able to enjoy the forest's benefits. Far from him, a girl smirked maliciously. Thanks to his seed, she could pinpoint exactly where Kiao was. With no risk of his life being drained, he continued meditating. Those who couldn't endure to the end admired the resilience of those who stayed, especially the fragile-bodied necromancer. Even the instructor admitted they were promising and hadn't expected Kiao to last until the end. He was intrigued and wanted to know how Kiao had managed to endure. Still, he believed Kiao had reached his limit and wouldn't be a match for Lang, who was also exceptional. A student gave up, but it wasn't Kiao. Lang continued the test, and seeing that Kiao was still there, he questioned if he wasn't as strong as a necromancer. The other students wondered who would give up first, Lang or the necromancer. Kiao remained focused on his meditation. Meanwhile, Lang was clearly at his limit, collapsing from exhaustion. The instructor knew Lang had reached his limit and instructed him to leave the forest. Outside, the students see Lang leaving, which can only mean one thing. Kiao remains in the forest, and the professor wants to see how far he can go. The day passes, and by night, Kiao is still in the forest, showing no signs of fatigue. He truly is a prodigy, the professor acknowledges. Even so, night has fallen again. The professor said to end the test because at night, not even he could protect him in the forest. Kiao decided he would stop then. As he leaves, he thinks the forest is truly insane. In a single day, he managed to increase his defense by 17 points. The students speculate that if it weren't for the night, Kiao could stay there much longer. The professor ended the class and told them to rest. A few days passed since then. Thanks to the seed, his defense increased considerably, and he can't wait to continue training. Some of his friends approach him. The short girl thinks they should start There are several benefits, like exclusive dungeons and competitions. He liked the idea, but now he needs to go straight to his class. As soon as it ends, he should meet them to start the guild creation process. The rich one agrees with the guild as long as he is the leader, and the fat one, in a rare moment of sensibility, says it would be embarrassing if he were the leader. The professor is accompanied in front of a portal. He has heard that there is a prodigy in his class. Indeed there is. And what's even more interesting, the boy is a necromancer. After this training, his defense rose to 500 points. This made him realize he might have reached his limit. Opening his eyes, he noticed there were different lights around. A blonde girl is also there in the forest. That's the mechanical empress, and Xiao wonders what she's doing there. There's something in him that is absorbing energy and helping her rebuild her body. Uni didn't expect the seed to do that, so he asked what Her Majesty wanted to do. She said Xiao promised to help her see the outside world, and it's time for him to fulfill his promise. A strong light began to emanate from her. Thus, the Empress returned to his body. It was a painful process, but she assured him the pain would soon subside. From now on, she can feel what he hears, as well as what he thinks and sees. The sensation of being watched is embarrassing, and he wonders if she can now know everything he knows. It can't possibly be true. For a moment, he imagined her taking a bath. She didn't like knowing that, and said she wouldn't be reading his thoughts. Finally, the sensation of being watched ended. With his defense reaching its limit, it's time to meet the others. The short girl does her best to protect herself with her shield. It seems they are in trouble. Even though they haven't done anything, they are being attacked. Guild updates require honor points, and every newly created guild starts with 1,000 of these points. It's their fault for being weak, and are only going to take their points and not kill him. The fat one and the rich one argue, but could never have imagined being challenged so quickly. The fat one mentioned that he already sent a message to Qiao, and he should arrive soon. To the rich one, even knowing Qiao was stronger than him and might not be able to beat these guys. Even so, he tries to keep fighting, but his attack hit nothing but air. He was counterattacked violently. Before even hitting the ground, he was struck again. This made the short girl worried about Ma Fei. The jerk is wondering if that's the leader because if it is, he must be the strongest among them. For them, it's hilarious that someone so weak started a guild. The rich guy is down, lying on the ground, completely drained. But before the defeat could be complete, Gao arrived, and he's not at all pleased with what he's seeing. The fat one was glad to see his friend had arrived. To the jerk from the other guild, it's just one more person to beat up. Looking at him, he assumed Kudao was also a physical combatant. In response, Qiao wanted to know what he thought he might be. The jerk doesn't like suspense and prepared to take down Qiao as well, throwing a direct attack at him, one that could even be fatal. With the force of the impact, a shockwave dissipated, destroying the ground. But the result the jerk wanted didn't happen. Qiao didn't even move, and wanted to know why his opponent's strikes were so weak, asking if the guy was starving. The guy was outraged, but he knew he had used 80% of his strength and still achieved nothing. Determined to win, he used a more powerful technique. Every single strike landed on Qiao without exception. The short girl became worried because Qiao hadn't even tried to dodge. To the other fools, the boy was going to die at this rate because those strikes were strong. The truth they couldn't see was that none of the attacks were effective. Realizing this, the biggest fool understood he was in trouble since none of his strikes could get through Qiao's defense. The chubby one celebrated, seeing that his friend had grown stronger. Finally, the rest of the fools realized the biggest fool had accomplished nothing. Their guild president was sitting nearby watching everything. Meanwhile, Qiao was just waiting. Since the fool had just attacked, it was now Qiao's turn to return the favor. Taking an offensive stance, he prepared to make the fool regret being born. Sensing the imminent danger, the fool raised his arms in a defensive stance to guard himself. The other fools shouted to reassure him, saying if the defense was high, the attack must be weak, so he shouldn't be afraid. Believing that the fool braced himself to block the attacks he assumed would be weak, Qiao had already focused his aura into his fist. He struck the fool's hand, who was confident he could endure it. To his complete misfortune, not only was it a critical hit, but his hand was utterly crushed. The fool was sprawled on the ground, unconscious. Qiao sighed, remarking that today's youth had no respect for anyone. The remaining fools abandoned reason, and in rage believed they could take down the protagonist together. But their president intervened, ordering them not to even try. He said none of them stood a chance against this person. The lead fool approached Qiao. From his aura, he could tell Qiao was at least at the intermediate stage. This was Luto, and he wanted to know if the man before him was the leader of the Killing God Guild. From a distance, Mephi declared that he was indeed the leader, and that the name had been his idea, a truly irritable narcissist. Ludo suggested settling everything with a fight, where the winner would receive the honor points. To Qiao's friends, this was absurd, as an intermediate level player was challenging someone at the initial level. Ludo asked what Qiao thought of his proposal. Qiao accepted it without hesitation. The moment he heard that, Ludo rushed toward him. But the protagonist managed to block the sudden strike. From the impact, Qiao recognized that his opponent's attributes were physical. Ludo drew a dagger he had hidden. He slashed, nearly hitting Qiao. The blade's edge grazed his face this time. That strike injured his eyes. Qiao hadn't expected it, but his opponent was an assassin. The dagger was poisoned, which is why he couldn't see now. From afar, the short girl called him a cheat, but for Luto, the goal of combat is to win. Everything else is irrelevant since both had agreed to this. With Qiao unable to see, Ludo prepared to strike again. He landed a direct hit on Qiao, who was in no condition to defend himself. As if that weren't enough, Qiao was now receiving a barrage of punches he couldn't dodge. His friends were genuinely worried about him now. All Qiao could do was raise his arms in a defensive stance. His opponent prepared the dagger once more. Aimed straight at Qiao's face, the blade was dangerously close to striking him, but Qiao's aura began to manifest. Luto noticed that something was happening. From one of the aura points, a hand emerged. It forcefully repelled Luto. The other fools had no idea what had just happened. Now the leaf fool was worried because not only did he not understand what had just happened, but his health points had dropped by half. Qiao told him to be more cautious while the Empress thanked him arrogantly, even though it was he who should be grateful. Ludo turned his back and admitted defeat, but he wouldn't walk away that easily. Qiao said he couldn't just walk away after hurting his friends. It definitely wouldn't be that simple. Luto was desperate because he knew this was the kind of moment where side characters get beaten as if they didn't have a mother. Qiao smashed his face with a single punch. It flew so far that if he had wings, he'd still be gliding now. In disbelief, the fools are terrified by this outcome. Even so, Ludo gets up, outraged by what just happened. He knows that strange thing is gone and must have exacted a high price for it. Opening his mouth, he launched a few needles at Qiao. Seeing them approach, Qiao didn't even bother to dodge. With a single motion, he destroyed them all. But that was risky, and Qiao realized he was poisoned. Full of anger, not poison, he went over to beat the jerk up for it, delivering blows, all of them, without exception, to his face. Taking the hits, the proud fool still has time to wonder how or why he is getting beaten by someone on the lower level. He took advantage of an opening to retaliate and give his battered face a break. This time, he launched several needles. Qiao didn't make the same mistake and dodged the danger, but the jerk hadn't stopped launching needles. A rain of them was coming down from above. Qiao couldn't dodge them all. Using his hands, he did his best to avoid being hit. Taking advantage of Qiao being occupied, the jerk used another technique. This one's goal was to immobilize Qiao and prevent him from moving. When caught by this technique, any warrior is immobilized, left only to await death. Recognizing that he almost got caught, the jerk wanted to know how Qiao felt unable to move. Close enough, he started mocking him, saying he was acting tough just minutes ago. Seeing this, the spectators celebrated, thinking his victory was now certain. Qiao's friends grew worried, thinking he might actually lose this fight. Ludo declared that Qiao was the strongest low-level player he had ever seen, but that it didn't matter. Qiao ignored the speech, visibly furious. The fool has no idea why his technique isn't working. Looking at him, the protagonist said maybe he wasn't even a warrior and that Ludo should consider that possibility. But that strength doesn't make sense. With all that defense and attack, it could only be a lie. Without waiting for an answer, he attacked again, determined to end the fight. Shadows enveloped his fists as he charged forward. The background characters, who only ever make nonsensical comments, began to believe in his victory again. Meanwhile, Chao's friends were concerned. Ludo was about to complete his attack with Chao immobilized. This time, Chao stopped it with just one hand. Once again, Ludo was about to be beaten. The first thing Chao did was soften his abdomen with a well-placed kick. Then he sent him off to the orthodontist. The fool kept making excuses, refusing to accept he was weaker, while Chao continued insisting he wasn't a warrior, but rather a necromancer, just with a slightly stronger body. Ludo spat blood from the blows, reflecting on how he was miserably losing to a mage. His face softened once more. His henchmen rushed for his aid, as he was utterly destroyed. If he'd taken any more of a beating, he might have ended up bald. Still not satisfied, Chao wanted to know who would be next. The fools raised their hands, surrendering. The guild war ended, and Chao's guild earned honor points for the victory. He went to his friends, and together, they celebrated their win. They only had minor injuries, and a few days of rest would be enough. But they were worried about Frozen. Her shield had broken. Since he no longer needed defense, they could visit a dungeon to find her a new shield. Asking the Empress, he wanted to know if there was a dungeon with more shields, and she said there was one. She just didn't recommend he go there, as he wouldn't be able to handle the monsters. Chao felt challenged, and now wanted to know what place this was. Speaking to Frozen, he said he knew of a dungeon with shields, they just needed to beat it. Frozen wanted to go, and the Empress had mentioned this dungeon required at least 2 people, so the two set out on this venture. The fat one commented on the two of them heading off alone at night into a dungeon. Frozen heard it and said that when she got back, she'd beat his flabby belly. This was a ranked D dungeon in the pseudo-underworld. Frozen was apprehensive, but Chao reassured her, even though he knew he almost died in the last ranked D dungeon. He asked the Empress if this was indeed the dungeon she'd mentioned, and she gestured suggestively. The girl thought she'd hold him back since, without a shield, she felt useless. Stroking her head, he asked her to relax. A purple ball of energy began to shine. They were entering the dungeon, which was a replica of the true underworld created by Hades. Frozen tried to wake Chao by pushing him. He opened his eyes and realized they were in a different place. This was the dungeon, and that was the underworld. Intrigued, the girl asked if they were dead, just like in the other dungeon where they were undead. Through the status window, Chao confirmed they weren't, as there was no warning about it. Thus, they were there as 2 living beings. Looking at her neck, Chao noticed a cross pendant. This embarrassed her, but he asked her not to move. Reaching for the necklace, he asked if she had it before entering, but she had never worn any necklace, and it appeared after they entered the dungeon. Looking at him, she noticed Chao also had one around his neck. It was likely an item related to the task. They needed to cross the Gate of Hell, reach the Atrium River, and guard the crossing. The dungeon advised, trusting their companions. She mentioned that the Gate of Hell led to the real underworld, and once through, there would be no return. Since the task required it, Chao was ready to go. Though Frozen didn't know the way, neither did Chao, but he suggested following one of the souls as it would surely leave them there. The spirit began its journey to the underworld. Behind it, Chao and Frozen followed, soon finding what they sought. Several souls were gathering in front of the gate, thus it opened before them. Frozen was still intrigued by the place, and Chao confirmed that those might indeed be the souls of the dead. In front of them stood the gate leading to Hell. From it, a massive creature emerged, devouring the souls gathered there. This was Cerberus, an epic level 29 monster. The system mourned that anyone trying to force their way through the gate would be devoured by the dog. It seemed this was what the Empress had warned about, the monster Chao couldn't defeat. Frozen doubted whether they could cross the gates with that creature present. Kid Ava trusted his luck and believed that since the dog appeared to eat souls randomly, it wouldn't focus on them. Just as he finished speaking, one of Cerberus's mouths nearly swallowed him. It gulped him down voraciously in the blink of an eye. Frozen was horrified by what she had witnessed. From the creature's mouth, blood began to drip. Another head attacked her with venom. She tried to protect herself, but her health points were rapidly depleting. Furious, she launched an attack determined to retrieve her companion. Having endured Cerberus's venom for over 100 seconds, the necklace granted her immunity to venom. Any venom attacking her for 10 seconds would make her immune. Discovering her immunity to venom surprised her. Thinking about it, she noticed the creature starting to writhe. Its movements were erratic and uncontrolled, and she briefly thought it might be in berserk mode. From one of the creature's mouths, a bluish aura emerged. Chao suddenly reappeared safe. His luck had been using his spear to lodge himself in the creature's throat, narrowly avoiding being swallowed alive. The girl was happy to have her friend back, and now it was time for them to pass through the gate. The creature was still weakened. The two ran with Chao, hoping to retrieve his blade. After leaping, he landed on the other side. The place was now considerably different. The system congratulated them for completing the first task. Reaching the river, a boat approached them. Inside the boat was a man. It was Kiaran. who asked if they wanted to cross the river. To cross, payment was required. Handing over some money, Chiao asked to be taken across and the ferryman told them to board. The souls on the shore began rushing toward the boat. Many wanted to board and cross. To Kieran, they were just a bunch of beggars. Wielding his oar, he pushed them away, saying they didn't deserve to be on his boat. After that, they continued their journey to the other side. Chiao wanted to know why the souls didn't cross the river on their own. That was the Acheron River. To understand, Kieran instructed Chiao to dip his hand into the water, so he reached his hand out from the boat. Before he could even touch the water, several hands emerged, frenzied, desperate to grab him. Terrified, he asked what those things were. They were the ones who had tried to cross the river and failed, doomed to spend eternity at the icy bottom of the river. Everything that falls into the water is dragged to the bottom and becomes one of them. And now the two of them are about to join those souls, because they are not dead. They are alive, and tricked Kieran into taking them across. With a swing of his oar, he managed to hit Chiao, who fell toward the cursed waters. The first thing he felt was that the water was cold, dark, and rotten. Several hands immediately emerged. Desperate, each of them wanted to grab Chiao in some way. Before he sank, Frozen managed to hold on to him. She grabbed him tightly so he wouldn't fall into the water. But Kieran was still there, and now he intended to throw the girl out of the boat. Before the attack, Chiao used the ring's ability. That was the window of opportunity he needed. Managing to escape the danger and return to the inside of the boat, facing the ferryman, he prepared to attack, punching his stomach violently. The ferryman flew, destroying some parts of the boat. Despite everything, he was weaker than expected. Because they were alive, entered the underworld, and attacked the ferryman, they were completely doomed. Annoyed, Chiao threw him out of the boat. The ferryman's body hit the water, where he was grabbed and dragged by the souls. Frozen wasn't sure if this would cause problems, but Chiao reminded her it was a dungeon, and they needed to clear the place. The two continued their journey along the river, and were almost at the desired shore. As soon as they docked, Chiao noticed another boat and another Kieran. The ferryman realized they were there. They immediately grew alert, wondering why he was still alive. The player said that wasn't Kieran, but from what he overheard, he realized they killed the ferryman. They had no choice as he attacked them first. The player said they were inexperienced, and killing the ferryman only increased the difficulty of the first hell from then on. Chiao asked for more information, but since they weren't close, the player wasn't obligated to until he noticed something interesting. He was captivated by Frozen and was willing to share information with her. In the first hell, sins are judged, and since he killed Kieran, Chiao would be severely penalized. Looking at Frozen, he told her not to worry. As long as she stayed with him, she would be safe, since he had cleared that dungeon many times. Frozen wanted to know why he did that, as there was no reward for completing a dungeon more than once. He then introduced himself as Wang Dafu, and explained he was a dungeon guide, and this was his job. That woman must be his client, and hired him to navigate the dungeon more easily. Claiming the woman was his client, he asked Frozen if she wanted to join them. The woman said she was the one paying for the service and wanted to know why he was being so nice to strangers. Irritated, he said his job was to guide, not to make her happy, and if she wanted, he could refund her money now, and she could complete the place on her own. Ending the argument, the two continued on their way, and Wang said goodbye to the girl. Not knowing what else to do, Chiao decided to follow them. The group reached the hall where the judgments took place. Quite a sight. It was the first hell. Before opening a door, the guide advised them to remain silent. He opened the doors after that. At the end of the hall, there was a throne, and someone was seated on it. Frozen tried to whisper something, but the creature banged its gavel, demanding silence. This was the judge, Yin Yu. Now their sins would be judged. The guy told him to watch carefully and do as he did. He introduced himself, claiming that in life he committed no crimes and asked the judge to look upon him with mercy. After saying this, the figure began reading from his book, and from it, a bright light emanated. With this, the stone he carried in one hand shattered. Seeing no sins, the judge declared him innocent. Next up, the guide handed the stone to his client, and she needed to do the same as he had. She was also declared innocent. He then said the item could only be used one more time and offered it to Frozen if she decided to accompany him further. Determined, she said she didn't need his help. Then the judge called for the next one. Chiao stepped forward, saying that he previously had no choice but now wished to be a good person. The guide smiled, knowing that killing the ferryman was enough to send him to hell. The judge found his name in the book, and he confirmed that Chiao was a sinner unworthy of forgiveness. For in his first sin, he disrespects the remains of the dead. The second is disturbing their existence. The third is cruelly abusing small animals. The fourth is defiling corpses. Even the guide was shocked by the monstrous deeds of the boy. His last and greatest sin was killing one of Cerberus's heads and the ferryman, Shiren. For someone like him who thrives on violence, this is the perfect place. He sentenced Chiao to the first valley of the seventh hell, the blood pool. There he would suffer for eternity in the scalding sea of blood. Beneath him, the dead tried to grab hold of him. The judge wished for him to fall into this sea and for his sins to burn forever. A red glow appeared. intriguing the creature. Qiao leaped forward, heading straight for the judge. Outraged that such a character would truly believe he was the judge of hell, Qiao decided to add another sin to his list, the sin of beating up the judge. With the force of the blow, the judge was sent flying into the wall. The guide, who had never seen such a thing, was stunned. He couldn't tell if the boy was a fool or truly had the guts to do that. Recovering, the judge said it had been a long time since someone had attempted such a thing and had the strength to succeed. A glow began forming at the tip of his hand. Now he was armed with a spear, determined to condemn Qiao to eternal punishment in hell. Enraged, the creature charged at the protagonist. His first strike missed, but completely destroyed the floor. He realized that Qiao had stolen his speed. Looking at him, Qiao remarked that the agility he now had was very useful. Both leaped into the air, continuing their battle. A powerful blow struck the ground, but Qiao dodged it. Grabbing onto his surface with his hands, he halted his movement. The guide muttered that the boy was going to mess up, while this client thought Qiao had dodged. Despite his considerable defense, the shockwave alone injured him significantly. If his defense were still 6 points, he would have died. The Empress noted that the judge's weapon had the ability to pierce armor and defenses. Qiao asked if she could fight, but she explained that she couldn't, as she was the boss of another dungeon, and entering here would erase her existence. However, she could teach him a skill. The only problem was that Qiao couldn't use skills. The Empress told him not to worry, as her heart was with him. Outside, the judge commanded Qiao to repent. He declared he would personally send Qiao to hell. With that, a massive and powerful aura began filling the hall. The guide recognized it as a potent energy. The guide's client asked if he wouldn't help, fearing that if the boy died, they would be next. But the guide wasn't in a rush and decided to wait a little longer. Qiao wasn't intimidated and was ready to continue the fight. Frozen was worried, while the guide suspected that Qiao had a trick up his sleeve. The judge didn't care and remained hostile. He launched an attack toward the protagonist. Anxiously, the guide thought he might have to intervene now. However, he realized the situation wasn't as he thought. Qiao managed to stop the spear with his bare hands. Returning the attack to the judge, the creature hit the wall from the force of the blow. He was down and his spear was lodged in his chest. The guide had no idea how the player's power had increased so much. The Empress asked what Qiao thought of the skill. He admitted he liked it, but said it drained him significantly. It was the Berserk mode, where for every 1% of life lost, his attack, defense, and speed increased by 0.5%. But there were side effects if he stayed in that state too long. This skill suited him perfectly, and Qiao was pleased. Despite his injuries, the judge found it intriguing and began to rise. A heinous criminal who had still managed to wound him. Wielding the spear once more, he charged at Qiao. Armed with his gauntlets, Qiao was ready to counterattack. Their blows clashed in the center of the hall. At that moment, the judge was using all his strength. Even so, there was no apparent result. Outside, Frozen blamed herself for being useless, thinking it was her role as the tank to block attacks. Amid the battle, Qiao stayed alert. Then the creature declared that as the judge of the underworld, he would now sentence Qiao to death. A powerful explosion of aura erupted. Frozen became desperate for her companion. There is still a lot of dust in the air from the destruction cause. The item Qiao used was damaged in the process. He lies on the ground while the judge remains standing. Frozen is holding herself back, believing all of this is her fault. Turning his attention to the others, the judge declares it is her turn now. He just didn't expect what was about to happen. Qiao was upset that the judge destroyed his equipment, and there better be an interesting item drop. Otherwise, he might have to come back and demand compensation. The judge calls him a fool, saying that just because he got up, nothing had changed. As he finishes speaking, he begins to attack again. Unexpectedly, Qiao manages to catch the spear with his hand. Stopping the attack, he moves toward the creature, ready to return the favor, delivering a clean, devastating blow to the underworld's judge. Qiao now seems unstoppable. His last attack tore a piece off the judge. The guides saw that the boy was ruthless and felt relieved they hadn't clashed. Helpless, the judge doesn't understand how it's possible that he's dying at the hands of a criminal. With his death, an item begins to materialize. Qiao collapses to the ground. The fight is over. Frozen approaches him, as does the guide, saying the boy is truly impressive. The guide notes that Qiao is injured and needs to heal quickly, but he doesn't even look at him. Qiao launches an attack toward the guide, grazing his arm. If he tries to approach the item, the hefty man will find out how to lose half his weight instantly. Guess I'll be sliced. That was enough to make him back off, but Qiao noticed a tattoo on his arm. He recognizes that symbol. Now he wants to know why the guide has a Baze tattoo. He also wants to know the connection this guy has with Baze and whether their encounter was a coincidence. Bringing the girl to the dungeon might have been coincidence, but if the guide really works for them, then their intelligence network is truly impressive. The girl asks if he's okay, and Kao says he is, but he wants to know what the judge dropped. He He then extends his hand for the soul core. It's a stone that allows an item to upgrade to rank B and adds a special enchantment to it. Qiao is disappointed as he doesn't see any use for it. He needs weapons and a shield. With that, they've completed their third task. Now they need to head to the Temple of Hades to rescue Sari. Ahead of them lies the Glutton's Hell. The Gluttons end up there, but it won't be a problem for them as long as they avoid the Hellhounds. Frozen doesn't understand why there would be such dogs here, assuming they only guard the gates of hell. But this is Cerberus's dormitory. He doesn't care about the living, and as long as they don't wake him, there won't be any trouble. Qiao notices something about the place. Looking up, he sees several open eyes. After that, the guide orders everyone to start running because Cerberus has awakened. The dog descends from the sky toward the players. Below, they do their best to create distance. The guide has done this many times and doesn't understand why the dog is attacking living beings. It's never done that before. Even Qiao didn't expect this, but since he killed one of its heads, he's now hated. Desperate, the guide asks if he's insane for doing something like that. Standing still, Qiao orders Frozen to flee with the others. There's something he left on the creature, and he needs to retrieve it. Trusting her friend, Frozen says she'll wait for him just ahead. Cerberus charges at the protagonist full of fury. Before being attacked, Qiao strikes his own chest. With the health he just sacrificed, he believes he can now handle Cerberus with ease. One of the dog's mouths is about to bite him. Unexpectedly, Qiao strikes it, avoiding being bitten. After that, he leaps toward the monster. With his enhanced speed, he delivers several blows. The monster tries to retaliate, preparing venomous attacks. Despite taking a beating, Qiao is still alive. A massive attack heads toward Qiao and he's caught in it. Poisoned, he starts losing health continuously. Now even more enraged, he fumes that he wasn't able to deal with a mere dog. With power radiating from his body, he focuses on just one of the creature's heads to avoid getting cross-eyed. Using one of his hands, he grabs a chain. Swinging it in the air, he manages to entangle the creature. All three of its heads are now bound. The monster is immobilized but furious. Still holding the chain, Qiao shakes it, dragging the dog, until he realized it was the creature pulling the chain, something he hadn't expected. He was thrown to the in the process. Shaking the chain in fury, the creature smashed several pillars using Qiao's body. Qiao, tired of the dog's antics, decided it was time to tame him. Pulling the chain with force, he commanded the creature to stop. This action pulled the dog toward his fist. He landed a direct hit on one of Cerberus's heads. The impact was enough to make the monster feel pain. After writhing in agony, the dog roared in anger. It began sprinting through hell, driving Qiao along with it. However, Qiao managed to climb onto the dog's back but couldn't figure out what was wrong. It seemed to have gone mad. Elsewhere, the guide believed they were now safe. He began consoling Frozen, convinced that the boy left behind had become dog food. Fed up with the overweight man's terrible flirting, she told him to shut up. Then she noticed Qiao approaching. To make matters worse, he was riding Cerberus. The enraged creature stormed past them. The guide had no idea what kind of strategy this was, and Frozen was worried about her friend. Proudolf said everything was under control. They were just taking a little ride. Looking ahead, the guide noted that they were heading toward the stem of hell. With immense power, the monster leaped over a lake of fire and brimstone. It landed unscathed on the other side. Before Qiao was at gate, though he had no idea where they were. On the ground, a red light began to shine. It enveloped the entire creature. Afterward, a mysterious pressure surrounded it. Finally, Cerberus was free from the chains that had bound him, and he threw Qiao far away. Before Qiao could hit the ground, the creature attacked him. Qiao was thrown to the ground, even more injured. As he recovered, he hadn't expected the dog to have additional abilities. Before him, he saw the spear he had forgotten inside the creature's throat. This gave him a glimmer of hope. Then, the same head that had swallowed him once, swallowed him again. It rose, ready to devour its enemy, but almost immediately, it suffered a reflux attack. From within the creature's chest, Qiao emerged, aided by his blade. For daring to swallow him twice, the dog was clearly wishing for death. It just didn't know how to express it. Behind him, the creature's body remained still. As before, no message appeared, making Kubo think the dog might be immortal. After reflecting for a moment, Cerberus rose again, fully recovered. If that were the case, Kubo decided to move to the next strategy, cutting off all three heads. Enraged, it was time to make animal lovers suffer. Using his enhanced spear, he began injuring the monster. Positioning himself above it, he had a clear view for the strike. With a single attack, one head was disconnected. Like an Ethernet cable, the dog's body lost signal. In the distance, the guide wondered what could have happened. It made sense that the boss was interested in Qiao. The boy really knew how to surprise people. Now he needed to finish off the creature before its head could regenerate. He leaped toward another head. With one swift cut, another head was severed. Now only one remained to finish off the creature. Qiao descended upon it with overwhelming force. The attack created a crushing impact. Finally, he had defeated it, earning attribute points and leveling up. Additionally, the victory upgraded his weapon. The spear was now ranked B. Whenever its attack was blocked, it would automatically execute another strike, stacking indefinitely. Even Qiao hadn't expected his item to level up. Frozen approached him with the others, wanting to know if he was okay. Qiao said it was just a dog, nothing special, while the guide remained incredulous at his feats. As a reward, the creature dropped an item. It was a single-use petal that increased all attributes by 100 points for 10 minutes, after which it reduced intelligence by 10%. A very useful item with side effects that hardly affected him. The guide was curious about what had been dropped, but Qiao told him it was trash. Frozen approached him, saying she had something to share. She asked the guide about the pendant, and he admitted he'd never seen anything like it before. This implied they were the only ones to receive such an item, though its meaning remained unknown. With the fourth task completed, the ultimate challenge was unlocked and the pendants began to react. They needed to place the 2 pendants in Hades' temple, destroy the pseudo-underworld, and escape afterward, or risk being buried with the dungeon. The guide, who was already about to leave, wants to know what they have done. Qiao asked the guide what the ultimate quest was the last time he completed the dungeon. It was just entering the temple. After that, everything was complete. Now they are certain they've triggered something secret. The guide's client wants to finish this task quickly because she wants to leave as soon as possible. Since the guide knows the way, he led them to the path that leads to the Temple of Hades. After some walking, they arrived at the location. The guide doesn't understand why the door isn't opening as it used to open easily. The girl then asks Qiao to look at 2 markings on the wall. They are holes, and they resemble the item they possess. The guide had never seen that before. The pendants are placed into the holes. Only after that did the doors open. Inside the temple, there is a dense and heavy mist. Qiao notices that the atmosphere has changed. He feels like he is in a completely different place this time. Lightning fills the sky, and atop a pile of corpses is a dreadful figure. Qiao doesn't know who it is. However, as soon as the creature looks at him, he becomes alert. Finally, the vision ends, and he realizes he is inside the temple. The body in front of him is the same as in his vision, and he assumes it might have been one of the last things the creature saw. Frozen asks if he's okay. Qiao says yes, but he wants to know if she experienced any hallucinations. She says no. Now he believes he was the only one to have had that vision. The guide is apprehensive. This has never happened before, and the temple is usually empty. This time there is a body there. As they approach, it opens its eyes, revealing a macabre smile. Qiao is startled as the body, which seemed dead, has been reanimated. From the sarcophagus, a light begins to intensify.